Great. You're good.
I call this meeting to order. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Ottawa, and the Mississaugas people. Confirmation of the agenda, that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby accepts the agenda for October 18th, 2021 Council meeting as presented. Do I have a mover? Paul moves, Kevin seconds, all in favor? Carries. Thank you. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. Go ahead, Trevor.
Yes, thank you, Reeve. I did want to acknowledge that on the bills and accounts, there is a check number 507226 that is in the name of my spouse, Tiffany Syke. She's an employee of the municipality into the daycare, and due to that, I will be declaring a conflict and not be moving on the bills and accounts or voting.
Thank you very kindly. Anyone else? Not seeing any, we shall move on. This is the part where the public can comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public to comment on any business that's on the agenda today. It's 2 minutes per person. Sorry. We would really appreciate if everybody's just going to repeat themselves, if some of the people first stand up and talk, and then you know that's what you're going to say. We do see the amount of people here. We do understand the interest in what's happening. So in the sake of time, is there anyone would like to speak to any agenda on the item before we get started? And you can have up to 2 minutes. If you could just come up to the podium and give us your name and address.
Just name.
Oh, sorry, just name. You're off the hook on the address.
Good evening. My name is Jody Jerome, and I'm a resident of Morris Turnberry. And I'd like to speak to the report that's being filed regarding the relocation of the North Huron Museum. I know some of the people on the committee, not all of you. You may not know me particularly, but I spent over the last 20 years being involved with the North Huron Museum. From 2001 to 2007, I was the full-time paid curator of the museum. I've also been a volunteer, consultant, and basically the person that the municipal staff refer any questions regarding the museum or the history of North Huron to. As currently as winter 2021, I was dealing with some of the consultants that were working on the Wingham trailer park. They had questions, and they were referred to me. I'm speaking to support this relocation. I have intimate knowledge of the building and the collection and its worth. And I fully support the continuation of it as the former curator of the museum. I wanted to let you know that what's being proposed has already worked in the past. The idea of a public-private partnership to run the museum was what happened when I worked as the curator, where it went from a museum that was only on the second floor of the building to a museum that operated year-round and occupied all 3 floors and incorporated another museum into the basement. And I worked with a number of businesses, community groups, in order to make that museum affordable to the municipality. And I believe that can be done again.
Okay. Thank you very kindly.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Greetings, my name is Richard Paul. Do I have to wear the mask to speak? Okay,
You're more than 6 feet away.
a little bit better. My name is Richard Paul. I'm a citizen of Wingham and associated with the Lions Club, past president. I would speak in favor of moving the North Huron Museum to the old railway station. When I think of sporting groups, if they have achievements, they'll put their banners in the rafters. If they won a championship of some kind, or if one of their members has done outstanding work, they'll retire a number and have that up there. To me, the museum is like the banner of the community. It's unconscionable to me that a place like Wingham, with its history, and it's well documented in the report all the way from Nobel Prize winner to international company conception to, I understand it's the smallest town in North America to have ever had its own television station. And we've still got the radio stations. So, like, to me, that story needs to be told, and for a town like this to not have a museum, for residents and non-residents, you'd have to question, is the town really that proud of its history? To me, the museum is something that would promote the community's pride and also promote future business in the community, because people are going to want to be there when they hear the story. So I would support this, and as a member of the Lions Club, I would hope that our story would also be preserved at the museum. We're proud of that. So it's the perfect place for it, and the old railway station, for most people in Wingham, it's a mystery building. For a long time it hasn't been used. It's a lovely, lovely building. This is the perfect opportunity to use that building and make it known again to the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name is Dave Tiffin. I'm the current chair of the Wingham Business Improvement Area. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about the museum this evening. The BIA board mandate is to keep the business community of Wingham as strong as possible. Because North Huron, and specifically the Wingham ward, has very little vacant industrial land, a lack of workforce to fill any industry that were to come, and a current lack of housing to bring in workers, we must focus on what we do have to bring people into town. We have a beautiful rural community with a rich history. We need to focus on tourism and give people a reason to want to come to visit North Huron and Wingham. The museum can provide that incentive. Wingham was known as the biggest little radio and television town in Canada thanks to CKNX. From CKNX, the barn dance became famous all across southern Ontario, with people like Earl Haywood leading the way. Mr. Haywood was recently honored by the London Music Museum. These two things alone would warrant a museum in many communities, but when you add in the fact that Wingham, a small rural Canadian town, is hometown to a Nobel Prize winning author in Alice Munro, we need to capitalize on that. To date, we have a small garden and a library named in her honor. We can and should be doing much more. A permanent exhibit honoring Ms. Munro, with other exhibits rotated in and out, can give us a huge tourist draw. Since the majority of traffic comes across the south end of Wingham, having a museum in the former train station, which I understand is being donated, draws traffic north right through our core business area. This can be a tremendous boost to our small business owners. The BIA board urges North Huron Council to give strong consideration to this evening's proposal from the Museum Committee for the long-term gain potential it can offer the region. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
As I was sitting there waiting, I realized I've got more connections to Wingham than I can think of. My arms are about that long. I've worked at the Foundry, I've worked at the Chair Factory, and I've worked at Royal Homes. I helped design the museum, I've worked on the museum, I did the Huron County Pioneer Museum, I worked on the library here, also the fire hall. So there's a lot of connections here with me and Wingham. I was born in Brussels. I was away from the area for about 10 years. I came back because I got a job for an architect, Chris Borgel, who was here in Blythe. And I'm still here. And that's 37 years later, after being away for 10 years. So I really feel I'm from Huron County. But my roots are really Brussels and Wingham, as well as Seaforth, because my mom was from there. So this area has held me. It has brought me back, and I'm still here, and I'm not going away. This area there isn't a month goes by that I don't find something new about Huron County that amazes me. I should have wrote a book on that. So this area holds us. Now, the other thing is we need to tell our stories because that's the only way they're going to be known. And our stories are very interesting, and our stories, people are interested in them, and they will come to hear our stories. They're all great. The stories are worth preserving, and they're worth telling. And in short, the whole thing is about a balance. It's a balance between our history and our future. And if we don't balance the past and the future, we lose the ability to know who we are. And I'm very proud of this area, and I hope that the pride of Wingham will continue in the museum. Thank you.
Thank you very kindly. Oh, sir.
Oh, John Rutledge.
Yeah. Thank you, John. Thought that's what it was.
My name is Ruth Haynes, and I'm from North Huron, just outside of Wingham. Thank you for allowing me to address the council this evening. I'm here in support of the relocation of the Wingham Museum to the new location of the old Wingham train station. And I'm here on behalf as a long-term resident of this area and what this area means to me. Both my husband and I have lived in the Wingham area most of our lives. We've raised a family here and most likely will retire in this area when that time comes. We are proud to say we are from this beautiful rural community. My husband is a third-generation farmer, and my father started the Frosty Queen many years ago, which is still a viable business in Wingham today. Having the museum in this location along with the Visitor Information Center makes perfect sense. I also have memories of the old train station many years ago. My father picked up parcels that were transported by the train and delivered to the residents and businesses in Wingham. So talking, as Richard Hall mentioned, there's lots to know about the old train station. It was very important to refurbish this building as it is a permanent landmark of the past and present of our town. Thanks to the Kuyvenhoven family, continuing to utilize this building is possible. With proper advertising of this location, people who would normally just pass through Wingham en route to their destination might instead drop into the information center and spend a little extra time learning the history of our beautiful town and everything Wingham has to offer. This could entice them to return again or look around while they're here. By sharing my personal feelings about our community, I trust that North Huron Council will consider and approve this plan that has been put forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very kindly.
Reeve Bailey, council members, invited guests and the public here. I've been asked to attend this evening's meeting with regard to the Wingham Museum project. Many of you know me, but for those who do not, I am the current president of Branch 180 of the Royal Canadian Legion here in Wingham. I'm also a member of the Canadian Armed Forces Reserve, currently the Area Elemental Advisor for the cadet program in southwestern Ontario. And I'm also the last chief of police to ever head the Wingham Police Service. I want to address council on all three of those fronts. First is the president of our local Legion. One of our goals is to promote remembrance and history. Several years ago, an agreement was made between the Legion and the Wingham Museum to share military memorabilia. The museum is by far the best place to keep artifacts. The Wingham Legion does have a small display case, but nowhere near the ability to display what a museum would. Our area has a huge military heritage. Most recently, there was a reserve unit that paraded out of the Wingham Armories. There's also several members of our community that went to war and died as a result of being members of the military. Their names are listed on the cenotaph, but more important, there can be history on each individual at the museum that we cannot get by going and read the cenotaph. This heritage must be maintained in keeping in mind the words "never again," lest we forget. My second front is Canadian Cadet Organization. Cadets is a youth organization for youth aged 12 to 18 years old. The aims are citizenship, create an interest in the Canadian Armed Forces, and physical fitness. The first two of these aims can be assisted by having a military display at the local museum. By touring the museum, cadets learn about our local heritage, where they come from. It also promotes the local military connection and education. Should our museum close, the cadet organization would have to locate other museums to go to. We have gone to Goderich, but that costs the organization a bus to get the cadets over there. My third aspect is with regard to the Wingham Police Service. The service served this community from 1879 to 2019, 140 years. When it was disbanded in favor of a contract with the OPP. The Wingham Museum is the only facility that has information about the Wingham Police Service. What will happen to all the historical information about the police service should the museum be closed? The current museum has a display listing all of the members of the service from day one. It even has a cell door from this building when the police service was in the basement of this building. Our community deserves to have something available for them to see the facts and history of our dedicated police service members. Thank you for the opportunity to present. And should council have any questions, you can feel free to contact me at any time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm Wayne Elston, and I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak before council. I'm the president of the Wingham Horticulture Society. I presented a letter to the council with what the Horticulture Society has done. I hope you've read it, and I'll just sort of highlight what we're wanting to accomplish by moving the museum. We presently look after the gardens across the street. I don't think people realize how many people come there. We have an opportunity when we're weeding and doing the garden, people just drop in. When I was there, I had a woman from Burlington, two women from Burlington, one from Eastern Ontario, came particularly just to Wingham to see the Alice Munro display. They were disappointed that all they could do was to have a self-guided tour. It would be extremely helpful when they have a museum that those people could be accommodated. With the relocation of the museum, The Horticulture Society presently does the Mary Lloyd Trail, which is right beside the building. I don't know whether anybody has had the opportunity to walk that trail, but excellent flowers and I think it's kept very nice. So that would be part of the new museum. And certainly the Horticulture Society would be interested in relocating or putting gardens around the proposed museum. Not speaking as the president of the Horticulture Society, I'd like to speak as a grandfather and a resident of North Huron. As a grandfather, I'd like to be able to teach my grandchildren two things. One is to fish, and the other is to show them where their relatives, past people came from, and why they did certain things. In our case, they'd like to know about their mothers. They grew up in this town, their grandparents, their great-grandparents, and on my side of the family, it goes back great, which is about 1840 when they first came. And I think that is the most important thing, is if you're a grandfather, is to teach your children about themselves, about their history, and by having a museum in Wingham, that would certainly be the best way to do it. And hopefully then they will bring their grandchildren to Wingham to visit. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Ryan Breitmeyer. I'm a resident of Wingham, and probably the shortest resident of Wingham in terms of time of the people and delegations you're likely to hear this evening. I live at something that in the map of 1879 was called Lot 4 south of Maple Street in the village of Wingham. In early 2009, my wife and I purchased this property, and the real estate took a dart throw at the board and said it's 91 years of age or thereabouts. And we discovered at our own little museum that on the 15th of May 1889, a Robert Braden and his wife Elizabeth sold the property for $150 to Jane Clark. A year later it was worth $950, so that brought to mind the likelihood that in 1889, $800 would likely build a two-story home clad in Wingham red brick, and that became our home, not 91 years later, but 120 years later. Now, emancipation of women in Ontario happened in the 1917 era, but here we have an insight into a woman owning property 28 years earlier. And in fact, Ontario, as a province in Canada, led the charge in allowing women to own property only 5 years before this particular sale took place. So Jane Clark, wife of Henry Clark, a pump maker, was a leader right here in Wingham when she bought a lot of vacant land and built a house. Now, I came through this history by looking in our own museum. There are records of these transactions, now shuttered of course, and the helpful staff and the volunteers offered their expertise with their stories and the archives, and they offered that to tourists and residents alike. A vibrant community honors its history. It studies and learns from it and encourages ownership of that history by bringing it alive and making it accessible. We have an opportunity to do that right here on our own Main Street, where in the passage of time, some curious resident might solve another puzzle. Something like, who in heaven's name was Josephine? To be named in honor on our Main Street. How many more Jane and Henry Clarks lie undiscovered by our modern search engines? They are voiceless, they are unknown, until someone with curiosity opens the door of our museum, walks in, asks some questions, and gets some answers. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that would like to take this opportunity to speak? Not seeing anyone else, we're going to continue on. A consent agenda that the Council of Township of North Huron hereby adopts the consent items 5.1.1, and further the Council of Township of North Huron hereby receives consent items 5.1.2 to 5.3.7 for information. Do I have a mover? I have Anita moving. Do I have a seconder? I have Rick seconding. Would anybody like to pull anything from the consent agenda to talk about? Not seeing anyone, I call the vote. All in favor? Carries. Public meetings and hearings and delegations. North Huron Museum Committee presents the final report. And I believe this is going to be Doug and Bill, if you can come up now and give us your presentation. Oh, sorry, Paul, would you like to introduce these folks and give us a bit of a background while they're coming up?
Doug Tiger, he's the gentleman supplying the property there and offering it, and Mr. Bill Farnell. He's a local historian in town.
And Paul was our council member on this committee that met all the time, so that's why Paul's familiar with everything. Thanks, Paul.
Try to speak loudly so that members of the gallery can hear it as well. And so, Your Worship, members of council, Township of Huron staff, on behalf of the North Huron Museum Committee, I wish to thank council for supporting the formation of our committee with the mandate to research and prepare this report to relocate and reopen the North Huron Museum in the historic CNR train station, along with a visitor information center. I want to thank my fellow committee members for the many hours of meetings, research, miles traveled, phone calls, and emails that they put into preparing this report. COVID delayed completion of the report and presentation, but here we are at last. It's good to be here. You all received a PDF copy of the North Huron Museum Committee report in advance of this meeting, and you may or may not have had time to read through the report and absorb all the information provided. Bill Farnell and I will be making the committee's presentation to council at this time. Bill has been a longtime member of the Friends of the Museum and is very knowledgeable about the North Huron Museum and how museums operate. So Bill will be speaking to what the North Huron Museum will look like in its new location. My expertise is more in the area of construction, finances, so I'll speak to those areas of the report. We plan to limit our presentation to 20 minutes, after which we'll do our best to answer any questions that you may have. We are not expecting council to make a decision on this report tonight. We expect council will want to have more time to review and discuss the report before arriving at a decision. In fact, we would ask that before making the decision, each member of council register for a tour of the train station. We'll give you more details at the end of our presentation. So, without further ado, I introduce my colleague, Bill Farnell. Take it away, Bill.
Thank you for allowing us to make this presentation tonight. I was trying to think of what to say in a way of an introduction, but you know what? I think the people who spoke in support of this project perhaps said it best of all. As a kid, I loved collecting things, and I think I could have been a museum curator or something like that as well. I collected everything. And I thought that's what museums do. They collect things. But what you've heard tonight and what I have learned from my 10 years of being a volunteer with that museum is that it isn't the artifacts. Truly, it isn't. An artifact is a piece of material. If there's no story behind it, why have you got it? It's the story that propels a museum to keep going. And trust me, you have some amazing stories in this community. 55 years ago, in 1976, Wingham Town Council adopted a bylaw to create a community museum in accordance with provincial statutes and community museum standards of that time. A brief but detailed history of this valuable asset can be found in the March 2018 report by then Director of Recreation and Facilities, Pat Newson. We've included that as Appendix 9, starting on page 38 of our report for more information. You may find the flowchart on page 39 especially helpful, because it lays out every decision you have to make if you wish to move the museum or if you wish to close and deaccession. The building was closed and all museum programming was stopped in early 2018. In the past 10 years, museums around the world have begun to radically rethink and change their vision of how they interact with their communities and tell their stories, past and present. Today's museum cannot remain fully static, operating like other institutions have over the past decades. A museum must be relevant to the changing needs of its community and its visitors. As libraries have evolved to be more than a collection of books, so has the role of community museums. To achieve the changing vision for the museum, our updated promotional activities and programming reflect this new and dynamic direction for the future. Now, regarding promotional activities, here's what we envision. A Facebook page and museum website with links to North Huron website, Blythe Festival, local businesses such as restaurants, B&Bs, motels, and tourist destinations. Developing partnerships with local community and service groups, schools, sports and cultural organizations, and other institutions. creating contact with local and regional tourism centers and local businesses, particularly those in tourism. Programming activities will feature a variety of new and creative ideas enhancing the museum's new direction. There will still be permanent and temporary exhibits and programs telling compelling stories of our history and heritage. Accessible archives for the first time for public research. Programming for all ages and abilities, as diversity and inclusion are part of our new vision. Open shelving for most of the collection for public viewing. Mobile exhibits that will visit other locations within North Huron and beyond. We have done those as volunteers in the past, but on very limited situations. Guided and self-guided tours with digital links to items within our collection. I got this idea from a Russian editor who came over during the Alice Munro time, and she said, you need to get computerized. A venue for hosting both indoor and outdoor special events, concerts, speakers, and workshops of interest to a variety of visitors. Our mission statement, vision statement, and goals on page 14 of the report now match and support this newly energized approach for the future of our community museum. North Huron Museum is at a crossroads. This is Council's opportunity to move this valuable asset into the future, thanks largely to an extraordinary donation of the historic train station by an angel benefactor. Let's continue to tell our amazing historic and cultural stories at our museum while promoting North Huron as a dynamic economic tourist center and family destination. We can tell and share our stories, past and present, in new and innovative ways. And here are some that you may or may not know. From the story of Edward Farley, Wingham's first settler, who rafted on the Maitland River with family, kids, and baggage on a raft he made himself at Bodmin, east of Belgrave, in the spring melt of 1858 to reach his town plot. That's a story that has to be told. The Doc Cruikshank story of how one homemade crystal radio made by Doc on his kitchen table started an incredible media industry that made Wingham, and I'm quoting, the television and radio town of Canada for a generation. The Nobel Prize winning short stories by Alice Munro, observing life in North Huron, which appealed to readers across the world. We know from the labor market studies commissioned in 2014 following the Nobel Prize award that there are many opportunities to reap economic benefits. And you can see more information on that in your report on page 18. And as a side note, I'd like to mention that Alice Munro has donated her Nobel Peace Medal to the museum. A good museum shares more than history. A good museum shares a never-ending story. It celebrates the past, engages the present, and always looks to the future to remain relevant.
Thanks, Bill. So at this time, I'll speak about building, construction, and finances. So first off, the train station is a great location for the North Huron Museum. It's a historic building. It's on the main street. It has ample parking. It has usable outdoor space. It's barrier-free. It has air conditioning and gas heat. It's been well maintained. It's along the Wingham Community Trail, and it's aesthetically pleasing. There is one problem with the train station. It isn't big enough for the archives. It isn't big enough to store the archives. The solution is found on page 10 of your report. You want to take a peek at page 10 on your report. So the solution is to move the 30 by 40, that's a 1,200 square foot building, the structure at the back of currently the back of the property, to the north side of the train station and join it to the train station with a wide hallway. The 1,200 square foot structure, 1,200 square foot addition will then be outfitted with special movable shelves that run on tracks on the floor. Members of the committee traveled to the Lambton Heritage Museum, that's just south of Grand Bend, to look at their shelving, which is also shown on page 10 at the bottom half of that page. This shelving will easily store all of the artifacts of the North Huron Museum. It's very easy to move. Our committee member, Verna Stuffler, just cranked the wheel and the shelving just rolled along on the floor there. So it increases the capacity of what we can store in the museum. So we've done the math, and we believe that all the artifacts that are currently in the existing museum will fit on the shelving in this 1,200 square foot structure, which then of course will be properly air conditioned and climate controlled for humidity and that for the artifacts. So that's what we're looking at doing for the storage of the artifacts. The cost for preparing the train station to become the new location for the North Huron Museum is estimated to be $300,000, and you'll find that on page 12 of your report. Now the cost for relocating in that cost, you'll see we've got $50,000 in there for an LED sign, a two-sided LED sign that can be at the road. So people, if you compare it in Goddard, you see it by the Goddard Museum, that kind of thing, where there's an LED sign at the top. That's included in the costs. We've got costs for special lighting, for some additional displays, and we've got, I think, $16,000 in there for incidentals. So we've got a number of things in there. So we've done our estimate, and so it's about $300,000 to outfit, to prepare that site with that addition for becoming the new location of the museum. The cost for relocating the artifacts is estimated to be $38,000 more than the cost of deaccessioning the artifacts. So if you turn to page 21 and 22 of the report, you'll see how we arrived at the $38,000. Page 21 shows the cost of deaccessioning the $139,000, or deaccessioning is going to be $139,000. This is the cost the municipality would face in the event of closing the museum permanently. So if you close the museum, the existing museum, you have to do something with the artifacts. And it's basically going to cost the municipality $139,000 to deaccession the artifacts. You can't simply just bring them to the dump. There's quite a process involved with that. Page 22 shows the cost of relocating the artifacts to the train station, and that's at $177,000. That increased cost is because we need to have a curator spend extra time in properly cataloging each item as it moves over and dealing with that. So we're going to be doing a really good job of moving the artifacts, and we budgeted for that. So the difference between 177 and 139 is $38,000. That's the amount we included in our budget for relocation to the train station. No tax dollars would be used to pay for the cost of preparing the train station for the housing of the North Huron Museum, nor for the extra cost of relocating the artifacts to the train station. The committee will take responsibility for raising the $338,000 through grants, donations, and fundraising efforts. The annual cost, so the next section then is the annual cost. What's it going to cost to run the museum once it's open? And that's really the key issue, I think, for the North Huron Council. And so if you turn to page 19 of the report, you'll see the budget for the operating cost. The far right column it says it's for 2022. The reality is, because of delays with COVID, if council was to approve a go-ahead with this project, we would be spending 2022 raising the funds, doing the fundraising, and it would be, in all likelihood, 2023 before this operating budget would impact the North Huron budget. Okay? So, looking on page 19, I'll just get to that myself. Appendix 2, the operating budget. The bottom line, you look at, we always go to the bottom line, right? So right column, bottom, $44,370 is the annual operating budget for the museum. Now, if you look under expenditures, a little ways down the page there, expenditures, salaries part-time and benefits part-time. Over the right side, you'll see that there's $10,770 allowed for part-time salary and $3,125 for benefits for that part-time salary, a total of $13,900. This is allocating an average of 8 hours of staff time per week to the museum for coordinating volunteers and working with volunteers to do program planning. So the intention is that the museum will be a volunteer-run operation, but the volunteers need somebody that's still going to help them with scheduling and program planning. They need that go-to person, and so that's where we've built into this budget a staff person for an average of 8 hours per week. Under building expense, if you go a little further down, museum building budget, you'll see there salaries full-time, there's $4,000, and benefits full-time, another $1,200. So there's another $5,200 for that segment. That is actually an allocation for public works to do snow removal, lawn care, and building maintenance. So about $20,000 of the $44,370 operating budget is an allocation, 8 hours per week of an existing staff person, and the works department doing snow removal, lawn cutting, and building maintenance. The case I'm making here, okay, the case I'm building up is what will be the net impact of the museum on the 2023 North Huron budget? What will be the net impact? Is North Huron going to hire an additional staff person for those 8 hours per week time allocation for the North Huron Museum? No. For 8 hours, you're not going to hire another staff person. Is the works department going to need to hire an additional staff person to cut grass, plow the snow at the museum, especially when it's right next door to the works department? No. So those aren't actually going to impact your budget in reality. The hard costs are going to be the heating, the insurance, those kind of items are actually going to be good. So that works out to the $44,000 less 20, you're around $25,000. Around $25,000 a year is what you're talking about net impact on the 2023 budget. The other factor to take into account is that once the museum is moved to the train station, the old post office can be declared surplus and sold. The cost of building maintenance, heating, and insurance that is currently in the budget for the old post office is going to more than cover the cost of the train station. Much more efficient building to heat, maintain, and likely to insure. And then what happens to the proceeds of the sale of the old post office? Could those be put in a museum fund to fund going forward the operating cost of the museum? Just some creative accounting on my part, but you get the idea. Okay. All that aside, is there a cost benefit to the township of North Huron? I believe there is. Yes, indeed. The North Huron Strategic Plan has an action item in it, and I quote, to establish a visitor information center. What better place can you think of than in the historic train station for locating the visitor information center right on the main street? Parking, accessible. Demographics clearly show that over the next 20 years, there is a huge wave of baby boomers retiring and having expendable income. Some call it the silver tsunami. Many of those retiring baby boomers have time and money and will be looking for things to do. The North Huron Museum can be a destination for those baby boomers, not only to look at the museum, but as a hub to connect them to other things to do and see in North Huron. A museum gives a community a wider presence in the world. The fact is, we've had tourists from other countries come to Wingham to visit the birthplace of Alice Munro. 85% of North American tourists who travel to Ontario sought an arts and cultural activity. And museums have a positive ripple effect on a community's local economy. So, can we afford not to capitalize on this unique, one-time opportunity to reopen the North Huron Museum in the historic train station combined with the Visitor Information Center? Can we afford to lose the historic artifacts that tell the stories of Doc Cruikshank, Earl Haywood, Alice Munro, George Agnew Reed, Harry Boyle, the Sea Canucks barn dance, and those who served in both World Wars? It is so important that we preserve the artifacts and stories of North Huron's history. So now this is an important decision, and the committee believes that each council member needs to walk through and around the train station before making a decision report. We are therefore handing out to you VIP tickets to register for individual, physically distanced private tours of the train station. Each ticket provides you with the contact information that you can text, email, or phone to arrange for a date and a time. Daytime, evening, weekday, weekend, between now and the next council meeting, to take a tour of the train station and see for yourself this incredible opportunity for North Huron. Thank you for taking the time to read our report and listen to our presentation. And at this time, if there's any questions, Bill and I will do our best to answer your questions.
Okay.
Turn lights back.
Council, do we have any questions for these two gentlemen? Go ahead, Trevor.
Yes, thank you, Reeve. I think really ultimately, the question is, from my perspective, is always in the devil in the details. And I think when this council made the committee in order to establish the committee to figure out the goal of what the train station and the museum could offer, the real idea was the idea was you can't just say if you build it they will come, because we had a museum, and the necessary we had statistics that they didn't come. The argument was, and I heard it in Mr. Furnell's comment, is it's not looking to be run the same way as it was in the past. But what does that mean? The devil's in the details, and we're not here tonight to talk about the details. But what I'm hearing from the committee and what I'm hearing from the information that's presented in the report that I've seen is there is a potential for economic development in this community that isn't named Blythe Festival. And it's not against Blythe Festival. I'm just saying it's something else to bring the municipality in. It's not a shot at Blythe Festival or anything like that. It's just this community has had one tourism thought other than that and the trailer park potentially in Blythe. Nothing has been warranted as to more things to be able to come to the North Huron idea. So I mean, arguably, as I say, the devil's in the details, and my question is really, this is a long-winded conversation to get back to my original question is, when you look at the details of that, how that operation is going to look like, are you looking at an individual, not as a municipal member, as the person who's looking at the operations of the museum? So I heard you're looking at a municipal staff to be the coordinator, not the runner of the museum. Is that my impression? I just want to make sure I'm clear.
Yes. Yeah. I believe in one of the sections there's the operating museum governance, staffing on page 13, the operation plan. And so yes, it would be a museum board that would be over the museum, under the council, but over the museum. There would be a museum board that would be basically volunteers. The staff person is just simply, and they're the ones that carry the vision, and they're the ones that, you know, are the driving force behind the new innovative ways of running a museum that Bill spoke of. I loved what he said. Like, it's not a static, you know, here's all our little stuff lined up on shelves. It's alive. It's looking for participation. It's museums reinvented. So I'm really excited about what Bill talked about. So that would run under the museum governance model there. And so that team would not be looking to the staff person to be the driver of the museum. Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Any other councillors? Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, through you, Ray, to the presenters. Reading through the report, I thought, man, this is a professional, thorough report, and it was all the information was there, and then with you presenting and you know, actually expounding on some points, it was good for me. I had questions about the staffing, but you answered that. And about the fundraising to the point where it covers the moving of the museum. Like, that's great news. I have a thought too that volunteers are always hungry for a project, and this would fulfill some of their desires and needs. So I thought it was good.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you, through you. Just curious, in the report there was no mention of what happens after. What happens if we were back at the same spot that we are now with a museum that we have to decession? If this doesn't come to fruition, or if this goes on for 5 or 6 years and it ends up the same way, where there wasn't enough volunteers to, you know, to support the museum going forward in its current location, what happens then? Like,
Well, I mean, this is the donation of the property does carry with it, you know, as right from the outset. It isn't in the report actually, but I did communicate that to the council that my wife and I would be looking for a commitment. I said, when I'm 80, you can do what you want with it. So I'm 62 now, so that's 18 years, right? So there's a commitment from North Huron to say, we're going to stick it out and we're going to make this work. And we're going to keep this as a museum for 18 years. Roughly, you know, it was 20 years back then, but 2 years have passed. So I, you know, I'm not trying to candy coat that. That is, you know, a commitment. There's a substantial amount of asset that's going to become part of North Museum or North Huron through this. But really, I believe, and I've seen it myself. I'm not I love going to museums. My wife and I love going to museums. We've gone backwards in Ontario, and we've explored all these little towns with these amazing little stories and things that they have. I believe that there's a lot more of couples like my wife that are looking around Ontario and having extra time and going to be coming to museums. So I think it's going to become more popular. But I believe, like some of the things that Bill mentioned there, you know, getting Facebook, having the displays, we do need the support of the staff person to see some of those things happen. That's why we've got that built in. We're saying, because at one point it said, well, can you just run it volunteers only, no staff? And we talked about this committee and said, it's not going to work. We got to have that person that's there to coordinate the staff. The hours have to be consistent, and so we are asking that this staff person, though they're only devoting 8 hours a week average to the museum, will have their office in the museum. And so they will be there from well, you know, at least the museum hours. But with remote working and high-speed internet, why not? So this staff person, their office is in the museum. Their job is 8 hours of their time. Is that clear for you? So that they're there to open the museum and make sure it's open the regular hours and locked up properly. It's a facility owned by the North Hurons. But then there's a team of volunteers, and I've discovered that there's a large number of people that are really excited about this museum. A lot of seniors, admittedly, and but we've got this growing population. The demographics have it there, so I believe there is lots of people that are excited about it and will continue to be part of that pool of volunteers that will be able to operate the museum as a volunteer-run operation.
The basis of my question, when I just clarify, if you're talking 18 years, say 5 years into the project, we find that the costs are skyrocketed, and the volunteers aren't there, and then that's going to be, there's another 13, 14 years of it being on the municipalities under contract to maintain it, no matter what it costs. So it's kind of an open-ended book here. It really doesn't matter whether it succeeds or not. The way it's laid out, it has to succeed.
Yeah, we do need to make it succeed. I guess I'm of the positive, and the optimistic is we're going to make it happen, and it's going to be done, and it's going to be good. It's a good location. It's got the parking. We've got in the budget to put the LED sign. The BIA is hopefully by Christmas having an LED sign at Tim Hortons corner there, which then can also be promoting the museum to people driving through the intersection. I don't like a closed-end deal, and that's why I said 20 years. It's no use saying, it has to be a museum for infinity. We can't make that kind of a thing. But
the township's been inundated through the last 100 years of, please buy it from us for $1, and you guys look after it. And we're still in the process of decommissioning most of those. So I thank you for your presentation. You answered my question. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Trevor.
The one thing I will mention, and I think it's been communicated not only in the current last 3 to 6 months, but I think the pandemic has caused a lot of things to reevaluate what is important in their community. And I know, I've been a part of the BIA in Wingham for this term of council, and I will resonate that the conversations at the BIA table have changed in the sense of not only do we have the businesses, but how do we get people to come to support those businesses? Businesses have had to change the way they operate. A lot of them didn't have social media. A lot of them didn't have online ordering. A lot of them didn't have things. So what I'm hearing from the business community is, and from BIAs are, we're not looking for if you build it, they will come. We're here to help. We want this to succeed because we believe the only way we're going to succeed is if this succeeds in one shape or form or another. So what I'm hearing from business communities is let's look at it to make sure that it's a viable interest, and the business community needs not only to be supportive of it because that's what economic development is driven by, but we need to be also understanding of what it means to be a business owner in a small town in Ontario. It's not the same as it was 18 months ago or 24 months ago. So a lot of the conversation has been, we can't just do the same things we've always done. And that's what the communities, I know the BIA and Wingham have talked about that. I'm sure, I'm sure as my fellow counselor here, Councillor Faulkner, has been listening to his BIA in Blythe, there's listening to the same questions. I mean, we can't constantly just do the same things we've always done and think it's going to change and miraculously money's going to show up, because that's not going to happen. So, I mean, I think ultimately the community as itself is going to look at this a little differently than they would have 15 years ago. I will be one of the prime examples. So my demographic, I can honestly probably tell you, there won't be a lot of my demographic step foot in the museum. I know I haven't stepped foot in it other than to have a meeting. I mean, is that right or wrong? No. As a person of my age and my demographic, young kids, it's not the first thing that they want to do. They want to do other things. But we have to make it a point to do those things as well. What's important to our community. So I mean, I look at this as a whole thing. And I mean, we have to look at it as how we're going to support it if council chooses to do it, or whatever the decision of council, which probably will, as I will mention before I finish here, Eve, this council will be having a meeting on November the 10th. That's their special council meeting for discussion about other services and other options. So that's probably when a decision will be made as it relates to this, or at least it'll be coming back. So I just want to make sure that was well known to the community here and the people in the public. But I mean, from my perspective, this report and the community that has come out here tonight gives a lot of people on this table and up here a lot to think about. I mean, from the BIA's perspective and just the community as a whole, I think this has put a lot of resonance in what we need to talk about, what's important in our society today.
Go ahead, Chris, and then we'll go to Paul.
Yeah, through you, Reeve. What's the process of relocating? Like you said, you'd subtract the accessioning from the moving cost, but do you just move artifacts from the old to the new? Is it as simple as that?
I thought it was that simple, but it's not. And that's why we have a curator. Oh, Bill, you answer that.
Just a few things to toss out there, because we don't, no volunteer knows exactly what's in that museum. And that's standard for most museums. When museums first start, and they're usually, they started from a local group, and they'll collect anything, seriously, at the beginning, way back. And then as you get mature and put the years behind you, you realize, well, I think we need to tell stories from here and here and here. So some of the collection no longer fits. And with the help of a curator, a professional, you can go into the collection and say, this no longer pertains to what we want to say now. The other thing is, we have things in the museum, and I'll give you an example. We had a collection of stuffed birds from the early turn of the century. Did you know that arsenic was used in the preservative of putting those birds together? And a curator told us that. So we had to get rid of them. I mean, you had to. We have upstairs in the museum a machine that gives you what your feet look like in a shoe store. It's an X-ray. It's still active. Do you want that in your museum? No. I don't know how we got it, but it's there. So you need a professional to help you go through. Oh, and we also have several things that might have to be, I can't remember the word. They belong to indigenous people. Repatriated. Thank you. Yeah, they may have to be repatriated as well. So that's why.
Is that expense in there? Is that?
Yes, that is. If we.
With 2 years of a curator in this.
That's what they would be doing to help us.
And we were warned by the Lambton Heritage Museum, the curator of that museum.
Yeah.
They said, don't rush it. Like, don't just grab all the stuff, throw it in boxes and carry it over. You got to make sure that, that shelving, that expense is about $75,000 in there for the shelving. That shelving has all, indexable locations on it. It's quite flexible. And so you gotta make sure each item is documented and you know where it is put on the shelving. It's quite a process. But when it's done, you have and the stuff that's in the museum right now is documented. Like there's pretty good documentation, right, Woody? Yes. So it's quite well documented, but it has to be gone through and it has to make sure that we know that that piece went there on that shelf, on that row, that aisle. So that's really where the it's not just a simple, let's just back up the pickup truck, load it up and drive over there. Volunteers are glad to do that, but we really have to do it very methodically.
Thank you very kindly. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up with Paul, and then I'll just finish off. Paul, as the representative, could you speak to this, please?
Thank you, Rudy. Yeah, I almost even look at it stronger now after hearing the 6 or 7 different people that got up and spoke about things there that I just took for granted. The military, just going and getting some information. And you know, at different things that pop up, I'm a stickler on cost. Well, right now, having that building over there that we can't go in, cost each household last year, this year, $4.06. So I figure with another $12 per household, it more than covers the budget. It's at $16 a household is what it's going to cost. Like I got to look at things, number like that. And to me, about, am I going to go see it? I sure hope I will. My grandkids, I hope when they come up, they will. We got schools up here, I think it was mentioned, where things will be happening at the train station. Future, hopefully the future museum. They're going to have, kids will be able to walk right down through the trail, they're right beside the thing. So whether it can go for 5 years, I feel there's no doubt in my mind that it'll go the 18 years with no problem. Thank you very much.
Thanks. So I'm just going to wind this up. It's getting a little late, guys. So just so happens this morning, I'm putting my man cave together, and of course, many of you know that I was many years in the dairy industry, and I came across an article from 1982 in the Toronto Star, and I sent it to 2 boys that started a beer company over here because it was when I came up against Labatt's, and I was recognized pretty well worldwide for my achievements. You have a milk bottle sitting in that building that's the second most expensive milk bottle that somebody will buy if you're a milk bottle collector. It's from this town. Okay? Don't break it on me. There were only 800 ever made, and I have 3 of them, and you have 1. I can't find any more. So anyway, what's going to happen now is we're going to hand this back to the staff. We're going to take a serious look at financing. That's the bottom line for all of us, as well as the future. Okay? And it will become part of, as Deputy Reeve Sipes has said, it'll become part of our conversation for the budget and see where we can go and what we can do. So don't expect a quick answer, but good timing because budget season's coming up and you're asking for money. Go ahead, Doug.
Just one final on regarding the financing. Something I didn't mention is there is loads and loads of tourism grants.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of, so I believe that we can apply for a lot of grants to help the operating costs and the continuing forward of the museum. And with the BIA mentioned and Dave Tiffin, chair of the BIA, I've been serving on the BIA for many years. We need to make Wingham a destination, not Wingham, North Huron, a destination point. And we have a lot to draw people to. I think also with COVID, we have relearned the fact that local is great. People, when they weren't able to travel, started realizing there's a lot of cool stuff in Ontario to come and see. And so, again, really optimistic about what we can do with the potential for this and making Wingham a destination point. This being a hub to send people to all different points and locations in North Huron and Huron County.
And I should just clarify for the press that seem to get everything wrong, I say because I usually say it wrong. Labatt's owned Canada's largest dairy. I own the smallest dairy, and I came up against them for the Toronto market, and I actually received the Toronto market. Had nothing to do with Labatt's, except they own the largest dairy. Okay, guys, thank you very kindly. Thank everyone.
Thank you very much for your time and
patience with us. Okay. Do I need that?
We have it on the agenda.
We're going to continue on now, 7.1.1, and that's a temporary suspension of the town hall public meeting requirements. I'm going to have it hand it over to Carson for the conversation.
We'll just give it a couple seconds here so that people on the live stream can you might want
You guys going to move in a second for that one, maybe? Sure. Okay. Hey guys, council, I'm going to ask for a mover for 7.1.1. Can I have a mover for it? I have Anita moving. I have Rick seconding.
So thank you, Your Worship. So not much further to add beyond what was in that report. As council will be aware from last year, we temporarily suspended the. You might want to dismiss it.
Hey guys, we're just going to keep running the meeting here if we can keep the noise down. I think everybody's ignoring me.
Yeah, I know Paul's having a hard time hearing me. So.
Guys, out in the audience, Paul can't hear because you guys are talking. Thank you very much.
So as I was saying, there's not much further to add beyond what's in the report. As council is aware, from what occurred in 2020, we temporarily suspended the town hall public meeting requirement due to the physical distancing and capacity limitations of COVID-19. Throughout the year, we've been monitoring the environment to see whether that was something that could still go ahead. At this time, as council is aware, we're still at a capacity limit of 50 for the town hall theater for council meetings. As we're well aware, town hall public meetings tend to bring a larger crowd. They are not a statutory requirement of any means, and is something that North Huron initiates through our procedure bylaws. So at this time, in looking at the current COVID-19 COVID-19 environment, staff are certainly not recommending that a town hall public meeting be pursued this year. However, we'll continue to monitor the COVID-19 environment, and should things continue to head in the right direction, this can certainly be reevaluated in 2022, and we can potentially go ahead with one.
Thank you very kindly. Questions, comments, or concerns? Go ahead, Kevin.
For you, what are the new public requirements now? Now they've got arenas open up to 100% capacity, and what is the? I don't know what the limit is for municipal meetings. So.
This is So this is still considered a workspace, right? So basically for your workspace, you have to have capacity limitations. I don't know what the specific ones are, but it limits this building at 50, or this at 50 currently, and then you have to have social distancing in place and masking as well. So that's kind of for at least our council meetings, we're aware of that's what we're at right now.
Doesn't that run in contradiction to the last comment you made the last time we were here about whether we had to have vaccine requirements in a town hall, in the council chambers, and you said no?
And that hasn't changed, right? We do not have to check for proof of vaccination, but we still need capacity limitations and physical distancing in place, which puts us at 50 people in this facility.
It's hard to keep up with. Okay. Go ahead, Trevor.
Yeah, sure. I know over the past the reason for the town hall, contrary to popular belief, the idea for the town hall was to get feedback from the municipality as it relates to just in time for discussion of budget. That was the intent. It was not intended to be a bitch session, which it generally happens to be, about services or what we're not doing good at, or why we made that decision or why we did that decision. The intent of it was in order to get information from the public as to what they would like or not like to see in the next budget. I mean, I see lots of municipalities on social media requesting the public to provide input on their budget. Now, I mean, we have a public meeting. Donna does an absolutely spectacular job of presenting that public meeting. We've had 3 people at it. It's not well attended. It's not a big deal.
And I will argue, Reeve, the only reason why we don't, because if we said we were going to take away with service, then we'd have 250. I'm wondering if this council, instead of the town hall meeting, would be willing to send out something as it relates to a social media thing about the budget or something to that effect, in order to get some response from the public as it relates to our budget preparations. Obviously, we'll take the information as we get it, whatever the information may be, but I'm wondering, the intent of the town hall meeting was for that purpose. So I'm wondering if it's as simple as that, to send it a 5-question survey about services they would like or not want to see moved or not changed or costs are different, whatever the case may be, then at least it gives an opportunity for the public to have some other input, rather than at the public meeting when we have the public meeting and the budget's pretty much wrapped up. Right? So I mean, by the time Donna gets to the point of having her public meeting, we went through this 3 times, and we're just hoping it gets over before before midnight. I mean, I would like to make sure we have some more feedback from the public before, November the 15th, November the 20th, November the 30th, so at least we can have some say that we've actually looked at and asked for the public's input. We may not get anybody. We may only get the same people who are not happy with whatever we do. I mean, but I'm wondering what council's thoughts are about that, because I mean, this is the 2nd year in a row where we haven't done a town hall, and I mean, we're not getting the information that we would preferably used to like from a town hall because of COVID. Any thoughts?
So, do you want to speak to that first?
I can, Your Worship. I guess the one comment I might make is we're crunching pretty close with budget time here. So for example, department heads have to have their first drafts of the budget to Donna in probably around 3 weeks or so. So for us to get a survey out, dissect that data, it'd be pretty tight for timelines for this year. But I mean, if we as staff will obviously go in the direction that council wants to. But I guess in regards to timelines, that would be my only comment.
Could we use social media for that, or our site? Put a
Yeah,
question
for
on our
sure.
site?
Like,
Yeah.
I think at this point, through Your Worship, to answer that question, I think just brainstorming an approach here. I think what we would do is we would develop something almost like a simple Survey Monkey, asking for feedback, and we would promote it on our social media at this point if that's where council wanted to go. We would redact any information on so that it's all anonymous, and then we could potentially include that in the first round of the budget presentation.
Council think that would be something we could use? It's something anyway.
I mean,
It replaces a public meeting.
Yeah. Go ahead, Anita.
Period.
I think you just reach a certain generation of the population with using social media. That's what I'm afraid of. I think there's too many people in our community that don't use Facebook or Twitter or anything like that.
Could we add then something in the papers for the older guys like me? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
And again,
I
we're
don't
just
know.
looking back at staff.
everybody. I mean, I don't know what. Like, I mean, the town hall, the town hall meeting was for that purpose.
Mhm.
I mean, maybe the town hall meeting part isn't the right. Maybe it's not the right time. Maybe it's not the right information. But I mean, I think we have to get experimental about how we get information from the public. And I mean, and maybe it won't work for this year, and that's okay. I just want. I'm kind of spitballing in the conversation about the town hall meeting. It came to me today about this whole discussion about, we talk about how our meetings are, what they are. Well, maybe the way we communicate is a little different with our residents than just a council meeting or whatever, because 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock isn't always convenient for everybody that wants to come to a meeting. They have to make special arrangements and whatever. So I mean, I'm wondering if there's ways that we can, that staff might want to educate us or take in for information from us. It doesn't have to be for this year. I'm just wanting people to understand that we as staff and council need to get a different idea on how we're going to communicate to our residents. Because obviously during a pandemic, public meetings are not always convenient.
Yeah.
And we don't know how long these restrictions are going to be on.
So let's just throw back at staff to ponder over those things. And in the meanwhile, we've got a motion here just to...
So if I may, Your Worship, I think what we'll do is we'll deal with the motion on the floor, and then we want to provide direction beyond that. We can put a second motion forward.
Yeah, so I have a mover and a seconder for the motion on the floor. All in favor? Carries. And did you draft one up for a second motion to the media?
I'll let Deputy Reeves say.
So what I'm going to do is, because I know the crunch that we're in for this year, what I'm going to suggest is to provide direction to staff to come back with alternatives to the town hall public meeting as it relates to budgetary information or knowledge from the public as it relates to budget. I hope that's clear. I think to me that solves this whole first budget issue. When we start having the conversations with Donna, I think we can use social media and the paper, because we have to advertise it anyways about the budget anyways to have people's feedback. But I'm wondering if, because it's in the procedural bylaw, that we might want staff to have come back with some alternatives of how we maybe amend the procedural bylaw or whatever the case may be to not have to do this exemption every time a pandemic hits or some other issue.
So I believe Carson's drafting something up now.
Every time a pandemic hits.
Wait a minute.
We don't know. You never know anymore.
So the motion, the draft motion that Deputy Reeves has suggested would be that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby directs staff to prepare a follow-up report regarding potential alternatives to the Town Hall public meeting requirement in order to receive public input into the budget.
During crucial times, or when the public meeting cannot be held? Should there be that?
So I think, looking at this motion right now, I think what we would do is we would bring it forward, and there's potential you could amend your procedure bylaw to remove the town hall public meeting requirement and replace it with another process, or just flush it out further, right? And so you could do that at the time, right? So you could put, should a town hall public meeting not be able to be held, this process will be followed, right? So I don't think we need to flush out those details at this time, but we can provide.
Staff can do that. So I have a mover, Trevor's moving, seconder. I have Anita seconding. All in favor? Carries.
Thank you, Council.
You're welcome. Thank you. 7.3.1, staffing levels and facility operations. There's going to be a change here to the recommended motion, and we're going to have Vicki come up and speak to this if she doesn't mind.
Before you this evening is a report regarding the staffing level and the operation of the recreational facilities. At the time of preparing this report, the Huron Public Health Department had mandated rec staff would be required to be fully vaccinated to work in the facilities. Following a discussion last week with local municipalities, the health unit has now reviewed their policy, and as of this afternoon are no longer requiring rec staff to be vaccinated.
There we go.
Go ahead and say it. I feel
I'm
like
not surprised. Honestly, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
Not surprised at all.
So, I mean, as you can imagine, I was stressed a little bit about this report coming here this evening. So, what the Public Health Department is doing, they're strongly recommending that staff or that the township implement a mandatory vaccination policy, but mandatory being that we are required to put in a vaccination policy, not necessarily mandating the vaccine. Okay. Our recommendation, staff's recommendation, obviously has changed, and the recommendation is that the report before you be received for information. Also, just want to point out, as of the staff vaccination policy that is being presented later this evening does meet the current legislation. So, a couple key points. I was listening, obviously, to the discussion that was carrying forward. I just want to make sure that we're clear, though, that this report and the policy that was in place dealt with staff. There is still a requirement that individuals entering the recreational facilities have to be fully vaccinated to access the facility. So I just want to make sure there's no misunderstanding about that. I did read something on the weekend that the Ontario Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Kieran Moore, has indicated that this requirement will probably be in place well into the new year. And I also wanted to clarify for Councillor Faulkner that the full capacity is for spectator seating areas. It's not the full capacity of the building, it's spectator seating areas. So just to make sure that that's clear. So Council, we would like to change that recommendation then to that the report be received for information purposes.
I'm going to get you to read it in a second. I just want to follow up, just so everybody's aware, that I did have a through an upper tier government an email asking me if our people we have at the door now are vaccinated, because we're turning people away that aren't vaccinated. And I was very clear that if you're not vaccinated, you can't come in and watch the show. It doesn't matter about that guy. Having said that, I personally think everybody should be vaccinated, or you just simply can't go in. And we can do that as a council. Or if you want, we can keep waiting until we get into the same mess they have out west. Because it's not slowing down and it's not going away unless we take a firm hold of it. And I don't want somebody come up and yelling at me because their little Johnny died because 3 goofballs beside him in the arena killed him. Because I'm vaccinated. I'm not sure about all my staff. I was surprised to hear that 50% of my staff is not, our staff is not vaccinated. I was shocked. I mean, all the opportunity down there to have it done. But again, these are personal decisions. This has nothing to do with, go ahead.
I just want to clarify though on that comment, Your Worship, so it's no confusion. It's 50% of the rec facility staff, not all of the rec staff. It's the facility operators that look after the ice and maintain the buildings. So I just want to make sure that you do have other staff that, like our programming staff and things like that, they're vaccinated.
I appreciate that.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. So we're going to accept this as information, but honest to God, guys, if we're going to bring this to an end, we're going to do anything about it, maybe we're the ones way down here to have to teach the upper tier how to do it. In, out, in, out, in, out. Hold it. Let's make a decision. Go ahead, Kevin.
Since this report is on the staffing levels of recreational facilities, for information purposes, have you any more information on staffing? As we've been looking for people regularly, how is that being managed?
Through you, Your Worship, since Council may recall, I brought forward a report and asking for approval to advertise for a full-time position. And we have gone through the process and we just completed the interviews. And there were a few good candidates that came out, and we're in the process of offering a position.
Well, we were going to make some part-time, offering part-time to existing people that have been working for us for quite some time. Is that moving forward at all?
Through Your Worship, that is moving forward as well.
Okay. So going back to, can you read the
So the recommended motion based on the Huron Public Health changes would be that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the report of the Director of Recreation and Community Services dated October 18, 2021 regarding the staffing levels at the recreational facilities for information purposes.
Do I have a mover? Trevor moves. Do I have a seconder? Rick seconds. Questions, comments, concerns from the council? We'll start with Trevor, then we'll go to Chris.
I just want to, and it's really only for my information, so, and maybe council wants this information too, but can you tell me how many operators per site do we physically have to have in order to operate both Blythe Arena and the North Huron Westcast Community Complex? Can you just, is that an easy question to answer, or is it based on a number of different issues?
Through your worship, I will tell you what we currently have, and stress that that is not adequate. So currently we have 3 staff at the Blythe and District Community Center. So that includes the manager. So in the numbers in the report, when we were doing the report, I did not separate out that those positions were, that included the managers. Okay? So that is a manager and that is 2 operators. Okay? 1 full-time and 1 part-time. There is no, and there is no, the full-time operator was part of the, I'm looking at Councillor Faulkner just to explain that, was part of the recommendation that was previously approved by council to transition a part-time position to a full-time position. Okay? With respect to the staffing level there is no coverage if someone is sick. There's no coverage for someone that's sick. There's no coverage if someone has vacation. There's no coverage, and that is with 1 operator on per shift.
Okay, sorry, let me make the question easier. What is the optimum number of operators per site? Just, that's all I need from a standpoint, because I will tell you is this is what the people in the public have heard this comment about we're short on operators, but the question is always asked of me, well, how many do we need? And the question I have is, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Contact the rec staff. That's what I say to them, because I have no idea what the answer is. So my question is ultimately, not necessarily what we have, because obviously it's not optimum. What is the optimum number of operators per site?
Looking at Blythe, the optimum number of operators is the 3, but we should have a second person on with those operators. They do not necessarily have to be an operator though. Okay, that's really what I was trying to get around to have the second person in the building. It does not have to be an operator, but we need to have a second staff person in the building. Okay? So in Wingham, at the Westcast Center, then it is the facilities manager, and currently we have 2 full-time operators and 2 part-time operators. And I've been authorized to hire another full-time operator. Okay? So something that we have done, we've been successful in achieving right now, is that we have been able to recruit a couple of students to be the second in the building. But we need to have that to work along with that operator and do some of the front area duties and stuff like the cleaning and vaccination, because the operator's main responsibilities have to do with the operation in Wingham, have to do with the operation of the ice plant and flooding the ice, but also the operation of the pool and ensuring that everything is balanced and like all the mechanical components of both the ice plant and the pool system is operating properly and there's no issues. Because we have to do log books and for TSSA and public health to review and things. So there's mandated requirements there.
Okay, thank you. Now I have a mover and seconder for, did you want to hear the motion again? We never called the vote.
Yep, I can read the motion again, Your Worship.
Thank
So
you.
the motion on the floor is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the report of the Director of Recreation and Community Services dated October 18, 2021 regarding the staffing levels at the recreational facilities for information purposes.
Okay, I have a mover and seconder. All in favor? Carries. Thank you. Oh, sorry, can you put your hands up again? I was too quick on the carry. Okay, it carries. Thank you. Do you think by the time you hit the end of the stage it's going to change again?
I hope not. It was a bit of a roller coaster last week with changes that the province was making because of different things, like the capacities and things. So it's hard.
Thank you very much, Vicki. Go ahead, Paul.
So do these people that figure that cost that they're all going to be given a walking ticket, do they know now what the new rules are?
They will know. There will be something coming out from you're referring to staff?
Yes.
Yes, that. So the CAO had sent out an email indicating what staff had as options, because they did have the option, if they were unvaccinated, they had the option of becoming vaccinated, as well as using some of their vacation time and or going on unpaid leave. The CAO will be sending out a new email advising staff of the new vaccination policy if it's approved tonight.
Yeah.
And things and what that will state.
Kevin just had a quick question here too.
Yeah, well, going back to the reason I didn't vote on the previous motion there was that you cut short the questioning period.
Yes.
Oh, I apologize.
And went straight to the vote. So there was other
My apologies.
questions. So that's
You go
why
ahead.
That's why I didn't vote on the last one. The question is just to anyone on the staff here. We've known for a year and a half, maybe even 2 years, that we've been short of staff in our recreation department, and nothing came to fruition. It has come. Push has now had to come to shove to get something to move. I just hope that we can take the information that we've been given in the last couple of years and know what works and what doesn't work. Because it wasn't for lack of people being out there to hire. We've known for this long. There hasn't been any succession planning in our major people in our workforce as to who's going to. We're all getting older. I mean, there's a generation gap between us and the next one's coming up. And just saying, hoping for that somebody doesn't retire isn't a good business plan. We need succession planning in our businesses in our facilities to alleviate this problem coming forward, that we don't have people that are qualified.
Yeah.
We're going to have to get more people qualified.
Go ahead, Vicki.
Through you, Your Worship, Councillor Faulkner is correct. We actually first identified this as an issue, I believe it was September of 2020, with the COVID requirements, and we knew we were going to be in need of additional staff. What really, I guess, brought it all to light this year was the fact that we had staff who were off on leave, we had staff who required surgery and being on leave and those types of things. But we are faced with a reality that we have an aging workforce. And we do have staff who are planning to retire in the near future. The CAO and I have been discussing potential plans, and in hope to be bringing something forward. We have taken, from the department side of things, we have taken some steps to start to train some of the, I don't want to call them junior staff, because some of them have been there a very long time, but they're non-management staff. In some of the managerial practices and things like that, in anticipation of that. But until we have a firm date of retirement, it's really hard to kind of firm that up. So we just continue to try to involve them in different things that they're not used to doing, that a manager would be involved in, a manager or supervisor and things, but in hopes of that. But we do, I believe that's in the strategic plan about
I
succession.
highly look forward to reading that on the 10th. There's no private.
And things, so we are aware, and we're working toward that.
Okay, thank you very much. And council, I do apologize for not going into the question period. It's just, I'm sure we're all tired of this. Like, let's make a decision, stick to it, but upper tier government, you gotta love them. Anyway, moving on to 7.4.1, landfill off-site monitoring requirement. Jamie's going to speak to this, and then I'll ask for a mover and a seconder.
Sorry, I just want to plug Donna's in here.
Fancy that. Yeah, if you don't need it, I can take that.
Jamie, do you want to hit the power button on the projector?
We're just going to hit the light switch when you did that cord just to make the offensive people turn the lights off.
Yeah, that would have been cute.
Did I do it?
Nope, it's still on.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. My first report up is the CAS landfill offsite monitoring requirements. So CAS stands for Contamination Attenuation Zone. So in 2018, and on behalf of the township, RJ Burnside and Associates recommended a course of action to the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Parks. The ministry agreed with the recommended course of action. The course of action included signing an agreement with the owner at 39601 Reed Road to allow monitoring wells to be installed on their property. A signed agreement is attached for council's reference. Due to the test results of the new wells installed, a larger radius of monitoring has been identified. RJ Burnside and Associates recommends, and the ministry agreed, more monitoring wells need to be installed. The purpose of this report is to seek council's authorization to proceed with more drilling, sampling, and testing on the property located adjacent to the landfill. Staff have approached the owners and have gotten the okay to proceed. During the budget discussion, a total of $50,000 was placed into reserves for CAS work. At this time, staff recommend that the work proceed. Are there any questions?
Council, go ahead, Trevor.
Is this bearing our own, like our cost, or is this cost not shared with neighboring municipality, or is this just us?
Through Bailey to Deputy Site, this would be solely the cost to the Township of North Huron.
Jamie, I actually have a question. So if we spend another $200,000 monitoring it and find out that it's there, what will we do to stop it from going any further?
Through to you, Reed Bailey, we can't stop the contamination from moving. The way that the landfill was constructed on Reed Road, it was an old gravel pit, and the geography around the area shows that there's eskers, and the way the water is moving from the landfill towards the adjacent properties, that's what's actually extracting some of the contaminant from the natural environment and into the groundwater. So by spending this $40,000 that RJ Burnside has indicated would be the cost of 4 new wells, we are going to find out how far that groundwater has been contaminated. Therefore, either moving forward with purchasing water rights, and also establishing where exactly that zone is, so that we can then take that into account with our environmental compliance approval.
So in Blythe, did we not end up, and correct me if I'm wrong here, and Jamie, you may not have been here at the time, so Trevor, I'll look at you, because maybe these guys weren't. Okay, I'll continue. So in Blythe, did we not have to buy the land adjacent to, no?
So as Reed Bailey, I was just gonna say, so I want first to apologize to Jamie, first of all, Because I read this as this conversation, if the one in Central here with the partnering with Central Huron and the Blythe landfill. So this is actually Wingham's landfill. That's why I want to apologize to you. Is I'm reading something and thinking something completely different at the same time. So I mean, you're right in the sense of when we found those zones in the Blythe and the Central or in the Hullet landfill, we bought the groundwater rights around it, and that's that contamination zone around with that we share with Central Huron. So this is the conversation. What I'm hearing is, let's do more drilling to make sure that we know exactly how far this potentially could lead, and then we go into the conversation about the Blythe Wingham landfill may have to do these agreements with groundwater rights and stuff later.
Okay.
So it's basically the same conversation, just a lot earlier in the process.
Okay.
So I think that's what I'm gathering. So I just want to apologize to you for the foolish question at the very start about whose cost this was, because I didn't even recognize the landfill was in Wingham.
Okay, and thank you for that clarification. Okay, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Reed. So they're going to go in that corner, I'd imagine, of the two roads there, and sink some holes and test. If it's contaminated, will you come back and ask that, or inside say, we better have, better sink some exploratory wells, another 100 meters away or 200 meters away? Like, is that the process? Because that finally determines how far the water it has moved. Then we have to decide, do we buy water rights, property, whatever. I think in the Blythe one, we bought the property, did we not? Because we were discussing selling the wood.
Well, I thought we did too, yeah.
We did.
Through your worship, in terms of, there was a couple things that happened there. One was in terms of, in the one situation, the property was purchased, and in the other situation, we purchased groundwater rights. So there was kind of two different scenarios there, and that was the interest of the property owner. So one property owner was interested in selling, and the other property owner wasn't interested in selling, but was willing to basically, and it's registered on title, whereby there's, I'll call it limits in terms of on the groundwater. There's limits on what they can do with the groundwater on that property, which doesn't affect them personally. It would affect a situation, for example, if somebody decided to put a bottling operation. You couldn't do that at this point in time with that covenant that's registered on title. So,
go ahead, Jane.
Just to help.
Thank you.
Reed Bailey to Councillor Palmer. Yes, if those 4 new wells that are being placed within that property on Reed Road show up that there is contamination hitting those marks, and two of those new wells will be actually pretty far onto the property lines. If those ones appear, then yes, we'll have to go even further to see if it's impacted the adjacent property owners as well.
Okay.
Yeah, this method that the consultants have provided seems, they're hopeful that the 2 furthest wells will come back all right, but they do need to close in on where that is, but also they don't want to impact the property owner's farming process. So they do have a lot of agriculture area in between where we could have put those boreholes. So that's why they're so far out. So hopefully those will be all right. But council, I'll bring back more information once I know.
Thank you very much. Further questions, concerns, comments? Not seeing any. Can I have a mover and seconder, please? I have Kevin moving, Paul seconding. All in favor? Carries. Thank you. Jamie's up again. We're looking at food cylinder and municipal solutions. Jamie, take it away.
Sure, thank you, Reed Bailey. So, in the July 19th, 2021 council meeting, representatives from Food Cycle Science Corporation, Food Cycle Municipal Solutions appeared as delegations to council. Food Cycle Municipal Solutions is a Canadian company based out of Ottawa. They have a product that turns organic and food waste into compost within your home. As directed by council, staff have investigated the Food Cycle Municipal Solutions Program and recommends that the township not participate in the program at this time. Staff recommend that further investigation and surveys need to be completed to determine how many residents would be interested in purchasing this type of unit for their home. Consultant calculations indicate that the North Huron landfill site has approximately 55 operating years remaining. And typically 25 to 50% of all household waste is organic and 60% of all food waste is avoidable. Landfilled organic waste produces methane gas, which is 25 times more harmful than carbon dioxide. Waste collection is overwhelmingly perceived as a government issue, and there are little to no incentives or funding available for waste services. So to encourage less waste being delivered to the landfill, the price of bag tags could be adjusted as an option. At this time, it is an unknown at this time whether residents are interested in purchasing and actively participating in this program. The recommended sale price for each unit is $150. Other considerations are the staff time to undertake surveys and track weekly usages by residents. It is also unknown how much staff time would be involved to administer this program and satisfy reporting requirements for the 12-week program. Many surrounding municipalities have a green bin program or organic waste program in place. In action item 6.6 of the Township Strategic Plan, it is to explore the possibility of a Township Environmental Advisory Committee. It is suggested that this type of research and projects be provided to the Environmental Advisory Committee. It is also worth noting that as time goes on, the end producer responsibilities, so the EPR, may encompass organics as well. So what they're doing with recycling in the Blue Box program could also be happening with the organics that currently get put out on the curb. So the total invoice to the Township of North Huron will be $27,000 plus HST, and it is understood the Township would be responsible for selling each unit to participating residents, which again is $150 per unit. Any of the units that are not purchased, the Township will be responsible for the shipping costs as well as a $25 restocking fee. Are there any questions?
Not. Go ahead, Kevin. Trevor.
Yeah, I mean, the conversation about raising the cost of bag tags isn't a conversation in North Huron. Because in my mind, we're offering two services. We're offering residents the ability to put their stuff at the end of the driveway, and we're letting them drive it out to the landfill at the same price, or even better, depending on how much weight they've got. This has been a conversation that's gone on for quite a number of years. It's been an issue of cost versus, what that looks like. And I understand, as Jamie's indicated, that, we're looking, it might become the bear of the users that, from how the green bin per the blue bin program is changing. Well, I can tell you, I've been a counselor for now almost 7 years, and we're still waiting for that. So, I don't know about anybody else, but I'm not very optimistic that that's going to happen anytime soon. Arguably, my concern is, and I looked at this as when I was looking at this on yesterday as I was putting my garbage in a dumpster. And I have a family of 4, and my kids love to waste food. Let's not mistake anything about it. I put a lot of waste in a garbage bag. And that cost me $2.50 to put that thing on that garbage bag. So, $150 isn't a lot of money if you take $2.50 off every time I don't have to put a garbage bag out on the curb. So, I understand there's some concern, there's some staff issues about concerns about how to administer the program, and I get that. I respect that. But to me, this is an opportunity to provide the municipality with another option about food waste. We don't, and I mean, that's the concern I have. We've been talking about green bins forever. I can tell you right now, our waste management bill isn't going down if we add green bins to it. So it's not going to change it. So I mean, unless you're willing to charge the residents what it actually costs for landfill, and it's going to be a whole hell of a lot more than $150. I mean, I understand we don't know what residents want to pay, what residents want to participate. But if we don't try, how do we ever know? And I mean, we could talk about this for another year or so. So I mean, I'm willing to risk trying to commit into a program like this to satisfy our urge. And I mean, everybody says, well, yeah, we have 50 years left in the Wingham landfill. Well, we just had a report of 2 minutes ago that just talks about issues with contamination at that very landfill. So I beg council in the sense that I understand the recommendation. Do I agree with the recommendation? Obviously, from based on my answer, is no. I don't believe the recommendation. That's not a shot at Jamie or staff. I understand their position. But we as council need to look at other options and put residents on notice that says, look it, you as residents need to do something about our food waste in this municipality for not your kids, your kids' kids, and the residents in 50 years from now. Because that's ultimately, right now we have 50 years to figure out what we're going to do with the landfill. How do we not make that longer? By eliminating food waste that goes in there. So I'm really passionate in the sense that we're talking about something that we can solve as residents. And I mean, I think we could get, there's 3,000 households, 3,000 residents in here. Even if there's half of them, 1,500 households, to sell 120 units, that's less than 1%. I mean, even without a survey, I think we could do that. So that's my comments, and I will leave it at that, Reeve.
Yeah, I just got 3 quick ones. Jamie, you said you would, there's a restocking fee, which in my world is quite, I'm used to that. But do you have to order that amount? Is that the problem? There's X amount, there's a limited, like you have to order 50 of them? Could you not order less?
To answer Marie Bailey, they provided, because of our population, it was a set limit of 100 units to buy, and then that would provide us with that funding. So the units are actually double. They're like $300 units. They would give us half of that in funding, and then the $25,000 is the other 50%, and then $2,000 in shipping costs.
Okay.
So buying more units would, the 100 units would be what they recommend for our population and what they think we could sell.
And the next question is going to be, I think I heard $45,000 or something like that for your first order. I forget what it was. Do you have a budget for that?
27,000.
Yeah, 27,000. Is there anything in the budget? Is this something we should be looking at our next year's budget and seeing if you want to make part of that budget? Because where are you going to get the money from?
Right, it's not budgeted, so it would be a new initiative. So
Okay.
either we could budget straight from the levy, or it would have to come out of the reserves
Okay.
for the landfill.
Okay. And third and final and scary one. So I was on council 10 years ago, and we spent a lot of money on the landfill at the Reeve Road, and we had 95 years. We had 95 years, we were told. And I was just told we have 50, and that's less than 10 years ago I was on council. So to Trevor's point, we're throwing a lot of stuff out there I guess we shouldn't be throwing out. I don't know what to do about it, but that's a shocking number for sitting back on council now and hearing a number like that. But I guess it's what it is. Add to it the population growth that we're hoping to have. Anyway, does somebody like to make a motion on either this motion, or Trevor, did you want to put forward a different motion?
Based on the comments, I've made my comments. The motion is with the recommendation of staff, and we'll leave that, and we'll let the council decide on that.
Okay. On that motion, do I have a mover? Which is not to go forward with this. I have Chris first. Seconder, please. Last call.
Sorry, what did you?
So the motion on the table right now is not to go ahead with buying these units. Paul's seconding. So that is the. I'm going to get Carson to read the motion.
So the motion on the floor is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the report prepared by the Director of Public Works and Facilities dated October 18, 2021 regarding Food Cycler Municipal Solutions for information. And further, that Council agrees to not participate in the pilot project between Food Cycler Municipal Solutions and the Township of North Huron until further investigations from Food Cycler Municipal Solutions is provided. So your mover is Councillor Palmer and your seconder is Councillor Heffer.
Okay. All in favor? Defeated.
May I ask something?
Yes.
If we participate in this program and we buy 100 units, is it mandatory to go ahead with the program for many years, or is there a commitment we have to do, or if we sell 100 units, that's fine, and then it goes up for a higher price?
So, to Councillor McPherson through Reed Bailey, there's a 12-week pilot project, and that's where the funding comes from. So in that 12 weeks, we are to sell as many units as we can, and then once we don't sell those units, then they're ours. So at that point, that's when we have to either decide to store them, I'm not too sure where, and then either return them back to Food Cycler at that shipping costs and the restocking fee, and then we would pay that out. So the pilot project is only a 12-week pilot project.
But the motion was defeated.
Right, so you as council now need to provide direction on how to proceed.
Or do nothing at all.
Well, so basically, the motion that was defeated
Was doing nothing.
Was to do nothing.
Okay.
Right, so now the Director of Public Works is going to need direction on how to move forward, how to pay, how that would be paid for, because, and I stand to be corrected, but I'm pretty sure it was for the Q4 intake, which would be this fiscal year, right? So you would need to determine how that would be paid for, whether you want staff to bring back a follow-up report on those kind of things, but the Director of Public Works basically at this point needs direction on how you guys want to move forward.
I would suggest somebody putting a motion forward that we have the staff bring forward another report, follow-up report. Trevor?
I'm actually going to suggest that, so I'm going to suggest that the motion, instead of not participate, actually says participate, and that the funding be taken of landfill reserves, with the discussion about replenishing those landfill reserves in the 2022 budget deliberations.
I'm going to get Karsten to read that back when he's ready. Go ahead, Jamie.
Through Reed Bailey, just not that I'm trying to have you guys change your minds at all, but I do believe another report is recommended, and I wanted to provide you guys a report on the landfill, as since about 2016, the amount of waste going into the Wingham landfill has more than doubled from 2016 till now. And that's why Reed Bailey has seen, there has been a big decline in the lifespan of the landfill. It's not only organic waste, but it's a lot of the ways that the activities and the operations of the landfill are being conducted. Not that they're wrong. They made sense before. I would say from my previous experience, it's not the most efficient way of maintaining your asset. The landfill is an asset. And to spend $27,000 on 100 units, it is my recommendation that you take that money and you really invest it into bettering the landfill as a whole. There's construction and demolition waste going in there. That should continue. There is, we need a better monitoring system for the cover. There is other things that can be put into place at the Wingham landfill site to maintain or extend the lifespan of that landfill. And I would also recommend that in the future, if that environmental advisory committee does move forward, they take a look and see what else can happen. If it's this, then it's this. If it's an organics program, then it's that. So anyways, that's what I wanted to say.
Just before going any further, Mr. McBurney had his hand up.
Yes, through you, Reed Bailey. This introducing the plastics into the dump, is that part of our problem too? We used to recycle that.
Through Reed Bailey, I know that because of the many things that are no longer taken at the curb for Blue Box, they do end up in our landfill. So the transition for North Huron is supposed to occur in 2025. There's other things that need to get put into place before that actually, if it does happen, happens. So in order for us to pull those plastics that don't belong in our landfill and make the producers that are actually responsible for making sure that they get disposed of properly or recycled, we don't have those mechanisms in place right now at the landfill. So again, our system works now and worked before, but for all the changes that are coming down the pipes, I would say there's a lot of infrastructure and knowledge missing that we could be doing to make sure that that asset stays for a lot longer than for 55 years.
Trevor?
So what I will say is, based on what I've just heard, if what the Director of Public Works had said right there was in this motion to defeat this, I would have went along with the defeation. What that's telling me is we're not looking for more information from Food Cycler. We're looking for more information in our own operations to understand what's going on with our asset and what this group is in this new committee that's going to be a part of and that type of stuff. Arguably, the hope and the prey of that discussion is going to save us $27,000 at some point and extend the life of our landfill. You know, that's the conversation. If I would have known that report was intended to be coming sooner rather than later, and there's no need to apologize to you, Jamie, in the sense that, you know, we never know when those reports or what those thoughts are from your perspective. So I'm appreciative of you providing some insight of what you also think that needs to come to us for us to make a valid decision about landfill. Because the residents of North Huron need to understand that, you know, $2.50 for a bag tag isn't cutting it. $10 at the landfill to drop whatever you want off for up to 120 kgs isn't cutting it. These are the discussions that we have to have. And I mean, from an operational perspective, am I surprised? Am I surprised that the amount of going into the landfill is double? No. And over the last 2 years, look how much construction and renovation business has been done in people's houses in North Huron because it couldn't go anywhere. So what are you going to do? So I mean, you know, so let me just ask a question, Reed, to the clerk.
Yep.
Has a motion been put on the floor? Because if it has, I'm going to request it to be removed.
Yeah, so you've moved a motion, I've crafted it, I was gonna read it back, and then the Reeve would need to ask for a seconder.
So I am actually going to amend my motion, is what I'm saying to you, clerk.
Yep.
So what I'm suggesting is that
Trev, just before you do, Paul wanted to speak, so we don't change it again.
Well,
just in
I
case
guess
he's-
just for clarity purposes, so I will read back the motion that Deputy Reeve-Sype had suggested first of all.
Okay.
So we don't lose sight of that.
we don't have a seconder for that motion.
No, you don't.
Okay.
No.
So the motion would be that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby directs staff to participate in the pilot project between Food Cycler Municipal Solutions and the Township of North Huron, and further that the pilot project be funded through the landfill reserves, and further that the necessary funds be included in the draft 2022 budget to replace the funds drawn from the landfill reserves for the pilot program, and further that the Director of Finance be directed to make the necessary changes to the 2021 budget. So that is, in essence, what Deputy Reeve-Sype has put forward as a motion.
So do we change that now?
So you actually, Reeve, had asked Paul, and then I.
Yes, through you, Reeve. Yeah, I'd like to see that deferred and turn it back over to a report coming back where we have to do some changes out there. I'd like to see emphasis put on that. There's some drastic ones there, hearing about the construction and that type of stuff going in there. I feel 100 of these things, I'd rather see that money going towards prolonging the value of that dump site.
Okay, is that the proper way, Carson?
So you're
because we said, well, Paul and I, we knew that we had the feeling that the money had to go back to the dump for better use. So that got beat at lost. So now we are supporting it. So can that be rescinded?
So your proper procedure here, first of all, is to deal with the motion that has a mover. So first of all, you need to ask for a seconder. If you don't get a seconder, you move on. If you get a seconder, you put that to a vote. If that's passed, then that's your direction. If it's defeated, then that's your direction. If you wanted to pass the original motion, you would need to pass a motion to reconsider, right? So again, a motion, and this is just me going off the top of my head, I would probably want to consult the procedure bylaw. Motion to reconsider within the first year, you would need 5 out of 7. Your mover of a motion to reconsider would need to be moved by someone who voted in favor of the motion, or who voted against the motion, right? So that would be anyone but yourself, Council Palmer, Councillor Heffer, or Reeve Bailey would need to put that forward, and you would need, because it's within the first year, you would need 5 out of 7 support for that motion.
So go ahead, Trevor.
So I can withdraw my motion.
Yeah, if you
So
want.
I can withdraw my motion, and that defeats that discussion. The conversation about whether what we've been talking about in the last 5 minutes has nothing to do with Face Food Saver program whatsoever. It has nothing to do with it at all. It basically has everything to do with the discussion that the Director of Public Works said is we need more direction about what the landfill is as a whole before we can even establish this Food Saver program at all. So I mean, so to answer your question, Councillor Palmer, it's not as if we're reconsidering, because we're not. We're actually requesting the Director of Public Works to provide us an opportunity for what the landfill operations are, because it's going to have impact on fees and charges. It's going to have a whole bunch of other impacts. I mean, that's really, I think, the report we're asking for, not necessarily just about this Food Saver program.
So let's do it this way. Are you going to withdraw?
I'm withdrawing my original motion. That's
Thank
what
you.
That's what I
So
was
with
getting
that
at.
being withdrawn, the motion now would be that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby directs staff to prepare a report reviewing the landfill operations.
You got it, buddy. Who's going to move that? I have Kevin moving. I have Paul seconding. Go ahead. Question.
What about the motion that that was defeated?
It was defeated. It was done.
No, but it. Okay.
I think it's the way it's written now.
Okay, it's saying that we won't participate with food cycler. But that, some of us wanted that to agree with it, but it was lost. So therefore, we are supporting it, that we're going with the food cycler
So that
now.
motion was defeated to not participate.
Yeah.
But council hasn't passed a motion to participate.
Oh, so it negated it at that point.
So the direction instead of participation, based on the motion on the floor, is that council directs staff to prepare a report reviewing landfill operations prior to making any decision on participation. And you can certainly add that to the motion if it helps provide clarity, right?
Okay.
But I think a motion that we have on the floor right now, if you want to read it, it's a good motion.
So the motion on the floor right now is that the council of the Township of North Huron hereby directs staff to prepare a report reviewing landfill operations.
And I have Trevor's moving, and I had a
So
second.
you have Councillor Falconer as your mover and Councillor Heffer as your second.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to call the vote. First of all, any more questions? Sorry. Okay, all in favor? Carries. Thank you very much. Hey, Jamie, don't go away because you're 7.4.4.
Thank you, Rick.
Oh, sorry, I think it's the next one. Sorry.
Yeah, 7.4.3.
7.4.3.
So fleet levels of service, correct?
Yes. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So the levels of service is defined by what the customer receives in form of outcomes. Customer outcomes are measured by the performance of assets and by activities that support the service and the assets. To begin developing levels of service, council should focus on asset performance, for example, condition, initially rather than the more comprehensive suite of program and activity indicators. As discussed at the last council meeting, it was the condition-based levels of service that were established as far as their fleet replacement. So today, the two fleet items that staff are requesting to take a closer look at are the 1999 sweeper, 9904, and the 2012 tractor, 1230. Current level of service for the sweeper is once the snow melts in the spring, staff sweep for a month to retrieve sand and salt debris from the winter maintenance. During the summer months, staff go out once a month to clear the main streets to keep the mains in a clean state, as well for line painting. In the fall months, and when the leaves start to accumulate on the roadways, the sweeper goes out for 2 to 3 weeks to clear the roads and open up the catch basins from debris. And then once the winter sets in, the sweeper is winterized and put away for the season. Based on past experience, street sweeping varies in price from $125 to $150 per hour. If I take the average of 235 hours that our sweeper goes throughout the township throughout the year, an estimated cost for street sweeping is $35,250, using the highest per hour amount. It could be less. This would work out to about 8 years of activity versus purchasing a new sweeper at $300,000. It also should be noted that the estimated cost of the street sweeper could be higher due to the difficulty of purchasing equipment during the COVID-19 pandemic and post-COVID-19 pandemic. So the tractor, the 1230, is a dual-use piece of equipment. Its level of service currently is during the spring, there are 2 weeks of cutting in the township. In the later part of the summer, the tractor is used for a month to cut fence line to fence line in the township, mostly in the rural area. In the winter months, the tractor is converted and becomes part of the winter maintenance equipment. It has a blower attachment and is used to clear parking lots. And again, basing my costs on different municipalities and what they get back as far as tender results. The cost for roadside ditch cutting could be anywhere from $80 to $90. So, based on the township's 200 hours, and using the $90, which is the higher amount, an estimated contract cost would be around $18,000 a year for roadside mowing. These costs work out to approximately 9 years of roadside cutting being contracted out. Similar to the street sweeping, it is a single activity where currently the public works crew can stop and attend other activities if need be. The table below shows the pieces of equipment that are due for replacement and that have a lower risk rating. So there are a few options that I have provided to council to move forward with these pieces of equipment. So option 1 is status quo, and that's to do nothing. This option is not recommended as the current condition of the 2 pieces of fleet have high scores. These high scores rank them as needs immediate consideration. By determining the next step, staff will have the ability to be proactive and not reactive if they break down. Option 2, purchase new pieces of equipment. This option is also not recommended, as currently there are higher risking fleet equipment that are mandatory that need to be purchased over the essential above-mentioned fleet. Option 3, contract out these services, reduce the required hours to provide a lower cost to lessen the impact to the budget. Doing this will provide the service, yet will be at a lower service level than what residents are used to. This could potentially bring complaints of increased debris on the roadways and issues with invasive plants in the ditches. This option is not recommended by staff, as this would be a significant decrease in service. Option 4, purchase a new tractor for roadside mowing in 2025 and winter maintenance, and when the street sweeper breaks down, do not replace it, and tender this activity out. That will remove the need to budget for $300,000. The hours required will also need to be decreased and only provide the street sweeping twice a year. This will be a reduction in service level and may bring complaints, but will save funds and fleet maintenance cost. This option is the one that is recommended by staff. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Jamie. Would somebody like to put a number forward? Or you want to have a conversation?
Conversation, please.
Yes, go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, Reed. The 2001 tractor, what are its functions?
Through Reed Bailey to Councillor Palmer, it is it works at the landfill. So it is solely used for landfill activities. So moving items back and forth, or moving dirt. It is a very high score, but it's used very minimally, and I'd say it's still
fair enough. That's good.
Decent.
That's good. I personally I agree with staff here. Purchasing a new tractor for winter and mowing in 25 or later, depends. We have to be flexible, and then use the sweeper till it dies, and then contract it. It does make sense to me, because, like you said, there are other assets that are at the top list of being needed to be replaced as well. So it does save money.
You putting that motion forward for number 4 then, or?
I think, is it fair to have more conversation?
No, go ahead. Anybody else? Go ahead, Kevin.
I'd like to send my appreciation to you for this report, and this is the kind of reports that I like to see come out to council, where there's both things. The job is still getting done, but yet we're looking at creative new ways of financing or going forward with some things that we had not done in the past. My only comment was one of the asterisks on here was to be funded from the water and sewer usually pay budget in the near future. I was under the understanding that was for infrastructure and not for PUC maintenance equipment. That extra that we're paying on our water and sewer for future development. I'm just curious as to what part of the water and sewer budget that was going to come out of.
Through Reed Bailey to Councillor Faulkner, I haven't discussed that with Donna yet, but it is used mostly to make sure that the water or sanitary lines are not going to be hit. So that's where the vac truck comes in. I believe it was purchased through the PUC back, like historically. if we cannot fund it through the water or sewer budgets, then we're gonna have to come back to this as a conversation, as it's a fairly high-priced, again, piece of equipment that we would have to determine whether or not, again, to have that in our fleet, if it's really required or not.
Is that a high usage piece, or is it just something you do in spring and fall where you contract it out?
Through Reed Bailey to Councillor Faulkner, we can contract that work out, but the guys do use it quite frequently for many of their activities all year long, as they're able to daylight services, as well as provide that added security that where they're going to dig is they're not going to hit something.
Trevor?
Yes, sir. You know, my question is always been, or my comment is always, you know, 230. Like, I mean, with the talk of the conversation about the sweeper, 235 hours for an entire year seems like a lot of hours where that sweeper is sitting idle and not doing a whole lot of work. And I would argue, you know, the conversation, you know, no matter what we do, I want to go back to this. No matter what we do, if there is a lower level of service than what they're used to, we're going to hear complaints. So let's get that right out in the open right now. The question ultimately becomes is, obviously with the sweeper, the intent is to not have that stuff go down the storm sewers. That's really the intent. It's to keep it off out of the storm sewers so you're not having to treat it or whatever the case may be when it heads down there. And that's where the sucker comes in as well. So I mean, anything we do is going to reduce anything that's going to reduce a level of service, chances are we're going to get some type of complaints. I would argue that, you know, if we contracted this out, I suspect we're not going to see a significant level of change in what the service really needs to be. My concern is ultimately, is the 235 hours what we really needed to do rather than mandatory minimum standard? I mean, you know, if something was to be there, we did it because that was a piece of equipment we had, as opposed to something else we could have been doing. You know, I'm not suggesting that's what would have been done, but is it necessary, the 235 hours? So, I mean, that could be on the high side. We don't know. I mean, I'm just thinking, ultimately, I think the recommendation from staff is an ideal recommendation to save capital money. Ultimately, as I'm looking at Donna, we've been talking about this for 8 years. The less assets we need to have to actually maintain and continue to have in this municipality is going to satisfy us going forward when we don't have to talk about asset management reserves. So, I mean, ultimately, I think the recommendation that, you know, Jamie has put forward is a good one in the sense of and this is probably not the only asset, piece of equipment we're going to be talking about over the next, you know, year, 6 months. So, I mean, ultimately, I can concur with the staff's recommendation.
Paul?
Yes, I agree with the recommendation too, especially I think with the sweeper deal, I think we'd be able to talk to the county and have them come in and do it, and yeah, I think it just makes sense.
Okay.
Number 4.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion then
Yes.
that we select option 4 for staff to proceed with.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? I have Paul seconding. Any other conversation or questions? Not seeing any. I call the vote. All in favor? Carries. Jamie, one more for you.
My last one, I promise.
Yeah, this is an easy one.
Until next week, and then a couple
Next year, yeah. Good luck.
Should hammer this thing down or something. Yeah, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Sorry, getting tired.
It's all good.
Thank you. So my final report is on the management of the Wingham landfill woodlot. This past summer, RJ's Tree Farm Inc. were harvesting a bush lot near the landfill on Curry Line. and noted a number of trees to be harvested from the 27-acre bush lot at the landfill property. At the request of staff, Huron County Forest Conservation Officer Mr. Dave Pullen visited the site and strongly recommended that the woodlot be harvested before the trees are unsalvageable for log materials. The certified forester is employed by RJ Tree Farms Inc. and is a member of the Ontario Professional Foresters Association. RJ's Tree Farms Inc. will provide management services, including facilitating the sale process for the wood lot harvest. The woodlot at the Wingham landfill has not been logged for an excess of 20 plus years. The certified tree marker recommended the harvest be completed this year. He noted that there are pockets of good quality trees, and by removing trees that are starting to show decline in their overall health, the woodlot would be improved. Therefore, staff are recommending to proceed and all funds to be placed in the landfill reserves.
Thank you, Jamie. I want to start off with questions, comments, concerns. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Reeve. Point number 4 in the discussion, I was a little bit taken back when it says the forester remits to the property owner, us, the net proceeds resulting from the harvest. So the net proceeds are calculated by deducting the costs associated with marking, okay, going in there, marking the trees, tendering, yep, got to find whoever wants to buy them, and harvesting, that word. He has nothing to do with the harvesting because a logger will do that. And that price, a cost, should not come off the value of the lumber.
Okay.
You know, we're hiring him to go in there, select the trees that should be done, and then he's going to say, okay, put a tender out to 3 or 4 log companies, and they're going to come back and say, yeah, we'll do it for this. And then he should tell us, you, staff, well, this is what company A will give. Do you want it? And then you select the company that you want to use, who gives us the best price. But the word harvest, it's not right.
Through Reeve Bailey to Councillor Palmer, the potentially why that is in there is that the tree marker also works for the harvesting for the logger. So the tree, RJ Tree Farm also staffs the certified forester.
Same company.
Yeah, it's I know that. That I personally don't like that.
Okay.
If everyone else is good with it, that's fine. It's the fox guarding the chicken coop scenario because, you know, it's good to have independent people do things like this. But you'd have to find out there's no way that we have to pay for the harvesting. That word cannot be in there.
Okay.
Everything else is fine, but not harvesting.
So I'm going to hand it over to Paul now.
Yes, yeah, I got my query up on that. That's not the way we've sold bush before, and there's lots of independent guys that go out and just strictly do the marking, and I just don't feel right with that. I'm surprised Mr. Pullen would even have allowed that to go through that way.
He might not know the details.
Yeah, that's right. He may not have known yet.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Travis.
Anyway, I just have to ask a question. So the forester is dealing with the whole issue. So he's marking it, he's selling it to somebody else, or he
tenders it out.
He tenders it out to who wants this. So in order to get it to that tender, you need to cut it. Right?
No.
Well, like, we're not cutting it. North Huron's not cutting
you
it.
tender it. Sorry.
Yeah,
you tender it to company A, B, and C, and one of them needs the work, wants the job, and pays. Then you'll know how much he's going to pay because the marker calculates the board feet, so he knows the type of trees, how many feet there are, and that's what the tender goes out as. And then company A, B, or whatever says yes, and in this case, it would be them, says yes. So you're not getting a competitive bid.
Yeah.
That's a bothersome thing.
Jamie wanted to follow up on that
Yeah.
too, please.
Through rebellion, no,
You did it, yeah.
Councilor Moore got it all.
Yeah.
So if the issue is you're not getting a competitive bid on the harvesting, then I completely agree. I mean, my question is that when you, like, we are not the municipality is not harvesting.
No.
So if they're going to pay us, again, if they're going to pay us $100,000, let's just say, okay? The cost associated to doing all of the work isn't the municipality's cost. Like, I mean, we're not paying for it. It's our asset. We're not paying for it. So somebody's got to pay for that service that this guy's provided. So, I mean, I understand if we're requesting that forester to get additional quotes on harvesting the lot. But I mean, at the end of the day, we're not doing it, and whoever does it is going to charge the municipality to do that work, are they not?
So my understanding is the forester works for the specific tree cutting company.
But
You're not getting the bids.
But I mean, just ignore the fact that he works for the same company. If he didn't, I mean, if it was me, right? If I'm a forester and I'm X company somewhere else, I go out and mark it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I go out and mark all the trees, and then I call Paul's company and say, I want you to cut all these trees down and harvest these trees.
And you would give us a bill for what you had done up to that point.
Correct.
Yes.
But I mean, if I'm getting a quote from Paul is asking me to pay him, not the township.
No, township would pay.
But that's what I'm thinking is happening. He's subbing it. So therefore he's taking all the costs, and he's then saying, I will bear all the cost. I will give you the net of whatever is left. If we don't choose that option, then we have to find somebody else to do the other part of it.
We would be silly to pay for the harvesting costs.
Yeah, I think I'm going to agree with Chris here because we're doing this. Jamie, I think we should maybe bring this report back a little differently, please. Okay, so we'll just stroke this one off for now, and you bring this back. You've heard what everybody said, and you understand. It's just not. Yeah, it's just not coming across.
So is that discussion here, is that impacting the motion on it all? Though is my question, right?
No.
And I would say, based on my read, council can still proceed with the direction in the Director of Public Works motion.
But
Right?
is she
Because
specifying? Is she
basically,
specifying a person though? I forget.
She's asking to proceed with the development and implementation of woodlot management plan.
But not a person. She hasn't found a person yet.
Right. So and
Okay, gotcha.
right. So you can still proceed with that woodlot management plan for the wing landfill, and again, for the net proceeds for the project to go in the reserves. Right. From my understanding, council is still supportive of both of those things. So the discussion here is really not impacting the motion that the directors put forward anyways.
The comment is more of operationally, she's heard our issue with how the net proceeds comes to fruition, that she needs to go and then have a discussion about how that net proceeds gets to, like, we're still in support of her harvesting the wood.
Yes.
And we're still happy that she's willing to do it and get that work done. My suggestion would be to put it on the same playing field as the one on the airport so that it's done at the same time. I mean, arguably, isn't that the same discussion that we're having?
Yeah.
So, I mean, if we were happy with how the airport woodlot discussion is done, then this should be done no differently, in my mind. So, I mean, I think that's the direction she's getting from the solution or conversation that we've had here tonight. And then I think the clerk is right that we're not changing. We're getting into the details as opposed to the actual policy and the direction requested that they've asked us for.
So do you have a different motion?
So the motion put forward would be the same motion, and the Director of Public Works operationally would deal with the concerns expressed by council.
Understood. Go ahead, Jamie.
Through Ruth Bailey, just to make sure, like, I understand. If going through this process, I flag that there is a concern, then I will just proceed with exactly how the Wingham Airport one was completed. So I will still be able to move forward with a woodlot management plan and harvesting. It may just not be with this company if the things that you flagged of concern are for sure a concern.
Yep.
There's no competition in this.
Right.
Chris, go ahead, Chris.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Words are everything, and this is telling you that we're going to use RJ. So, is that something that we want to do? Go ahead with this company, but make sure that we're paid in a different manner, like a different sequence. I don't know.
So are you, just to, RJ Tree Farm Inc. is the development and implementation of the actual management plan. That's the plan. So that's the company that we're going to use in order to determine the management plan.
No competition, just want to go ahead with them.
No different than whatever. If what you're asking or what your comment is, RJ Tree Farm is using X only to do what he wants to do.
Right.
That's the devil in the detail part. RJ plan is the actual management of the plan. Period. High level, that's it. Jamie's position is she's got to figure out what the detail is of that plan and establish whether that's the right, whether she wants to use only that forester or somebody else. I mean, there's no different than the conversation we would do with the airport. We would just say use this company as to implement the plan. And you as the staff take that plan and get the details and come back with the money. I mean, it's not our position to get into the detail of the operation of the municipality.
So I'm going to suggest that, Jamie, you're going to come back and tell us how much we're going to get for the trees sooner or later before they're cut down.
Yes.
And then Chris, at that point, we'll have the conversation about who's cutting them down. Did I say that right?
So you're getting an estimate is what you're asking staff then.
Go ahead.
So, sorry.
No, go ahead first and then answer the questions, then she'll get hers.
They did provide a list of trees, diameters, and potential board lengths, and they gave an estimate of $30,000.
So he's already been in there.
Yeah, he marked the trees, and he provided an estimate of $30,000 for that one company to come and take them down, who's already working on Curry Line. But if I go and I ask for other ones, then that's what I'll do to make sure that that is a fair price and that there's nothing concerning about that item 4.
So is that word harvesting, is it word you put into this? Just because you're considering the harvest of the wood? Or is it something he did or they did?
No, the report is very similar to the one that I took from the woodlot harvesting from the airport.
Okay, so it might not mean what it looks like it is then. So this could be an innocently put in there as part of the umbrella of harvesting.
Yeah, but I'll double check
Yeah,
that
please
to make
double
sure
check.
that's,
Yeah,
that
because we
is-
don't pay for harvesting. No. When they bid on something, typically, they already know what it costs. They already figure that into the board fee, like the price they're gonna pay. So it's taken care of. Okay, the word just threw me off, and if it was just in there innocently, then I'm okay then. Other than when there's no competitive factor.
Thank you. Anita?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think it's just tendering that needs to be more broadly than just the one company. And that's what everybody wants, to see more numbers.
Okay.
If there's a difference there.
Okay.
Okay, so I don't think I have movers on. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Not seeing any. I do not believe I have movers on that. Can I get a mover? Rick moving, I have Kevin seconding. Last chance for comments, questions, concerns. Goes along, go ahead, Paul.
Yes, you read. So I'm understanding there's going to be a competition of different bidders on that bush lot then, the 27 acres?
I'll try.
Yeah, I'm just curious what we're voting on here. 'Cause, an acre of bush, they can vary quite a bit in money, so I just want to see a fair competition there when I see the, okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Paul. Anyone else? Seeing none, I call the motion. All in favor? Carries. Thank you. Thank you, Jamie. Fire department, we have no report. Building department, we have no report. CAO, there's no report. Correspondence, 8.1 to 8.3. Anybody want to pull anything out or talk to anything on that one?
With their correspondence requiring action, so you gotta deal with them individually.
Individually, I keep forgetting, don't I? Okay, we'll start with number one. Coy Green, request for a skate park in Wingham. Go ahead, Trevor.
Yes, Reeve, I will tell you based on, I completely respect the fact that this is a young child who is wanting a skate park. I respect that he's went through the proper channels. He's trying his best to get where it needs to be. We know as this council has already got a request for the improvements at the skate park in Blythe. So I mean, I think ultimately where I see this is being deferred, as we indicated for the one in Blythe, to be deferred to the talk about to the recreation master plan and the 2022 budget deliberations. So I will move that to defer that till those conversations have had.
Okay. Do we have a seconder? Kevin seconding. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Go ahead.
Would we, seeing that we're gonna, defer it a bit, should staff contact him, telling them what we're thinking?
I think our CEO should send this young man a nice letter thanking him very much, and I think we all appreciate that he's going to be one of these counselors maybe 20 years down, maybe 40 years down the road. So anyway, yes, that's a great idea, Chris. Thank you very much. And we will be doing Civics Day, and I'm sure Trevor and I will be speaking to him on Civics Day, except for COVID. Myself, the Reeve, and the Vice Reeve go and talk to the schools if they request it about what we actually do and how we spend their parents' money.
So, I mean, who was your seconder on that?
Who was the seconder on that? Kevin. Okay.
So you have to put that to a vote.
Okay. All in favor? Carries. Slip past my. No, I'm slipping.
Get close.
Yeah. Okay. We have North Huron Community Food Share requesting funding. We have a conversation and decide what we'd like to do with this. I'll go ahead, Paul.
Yes, it's really brief. Yes, it is needed very much. You hate to say that, but that place is used heavily, and you can see the different spots, like from north to south of our municipality. It's used, and I feel we should be giving them money.
Further conversation. I'm going to go to Trevor first, and I think Anita had her hand up next.
Donna, is there any money left in the council contingency budget that you're aware of?
Yeah, so for council contingency, you haven't spent any of that. But in your community partnership fund, you still have a couple $1,000s in there, but you had a request from the Huron Hospice that you hadn't dealt with for that as well, or like asking for money. Now they were certainly asking for a lot more money than what we had left, a couple $1,000s that we have left. But still, in the community partnership money, we've spent, right now we've spent $2,225, and we had a $5,000 budget. So, we have that difference left there, or as you said, council contingency. I have that right handy, I know we haven't spent any of it.
So you're looking at about 4,500.
So it was $2,000 budget, you haven't spent any of the council contingency budget.
So Reeve, based on that, and so I would like to defer this until the year-to-date discussions are happened with the budget. And if we want to then, if council has enough money in their year-to-date funds to provide this donation within this year's budget, then I think at that time we can make that call after we get our year-to-date budget. I would rather us have that discussion then, as opposed to this off-the-cuff discussion about what's in those budgets, and all of a sudden we say yes, and then Tony comes to us when we're having that meeting and says, oh, by the way. I would rather have that discussion, at least that's my opinion. I don't know what other councilors' or thoughts are, but I mean, that's up to her for debate.
Yeah, I'm gonna hand it over to Carson for a second.
Yeah, and just to provide some clarity on something for council. So a lot of these requests that are coming forward are to be included in the discussions for the 2022 budget, right? So your donation and fee waiving policy requires these requests to be submitted by November 1st. So that's why this one, and you'll see the next one too, they're coming forward now because they're meeting that deadline. And then generally they're just getting that in to follow the process so that it can be included as part of your 2022 budget discussions.
Right. I guess my rebuttal to that, Carson, is I agree with you in the sense that, but I mean, arguably the food share is not something that, I mean, our budget's going to be passed potentially in February. I mean, we're all wanting it done earlier. I mean, if we provided funding in November rather than February, I'm pretty sure that North Huron Food Share would be probably happy to see it. I mean, if we've got that funding there in 2021, then let's potentially utilize that for the purposes of it, and then maybe have to look at it. But I completely agree with what you're saying. So I mean, it's up to council on what they decide to do later.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, through you, Reeve. The only issue here, though, is, how timely is this need? I see it as soon as possible, and if we have the money available, whether we give 2,000 or something else, I feel that it's almost our duty to give something here as soon as possible.
So could Donna just bring a report back for us on that?
Well, so if basically you have two options here that have kind of been put forward. One, Deputy Recycle said defer it to the year-to-date budget meeting, so we would just include the request on Friday's agenda, and then council can deal with it after getting the year-to-date budget number presentation, or if councils could make a decision now and direct staff to provide a donation of X amount of dollars.
Well, if we're waiting till Friday.
Let me refrain, because I thought it was in a couple of weeks. If it's Friday, I don't think we're going to get any more different information than we did Friday than we did today than we did Friday. So I mean, if council's willing to do that, I mean, I'm supportive of the North Huron Food Share either way. I got to apologize. I'm not always on with my dates, so if we're having the year-to-date discussion on Friday, we're probably gonna have the discussion right now.
Okay, so if we're gonna have the discussion right now, who'd like to put a motion forward? Donna, what was our amounts that we have to play with, please?
I will make the motion, Reeve, that we provide the 2,000 funding to the North Huron Food Share out of council contingency. That's where I would
second it.
I have Chris seconding it. Any more conversations or concerns? All in favor? Carries.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for my ignorance, council.
We were just letting you keep going.
Okay, the next one's the Huron County Plowmen's Association request for a donation. Did you want to defer this one to budget deliberations?
So this one, just for clarity, I believe the request is for $125.
Oh, I thought it was $1,500. Okay,
And
go ahead,
we do
Kevin.
it, and we do it. We've done it before, right?
Yes, this is one we do annually.
Yeah, Kevin. Did you want
No, I was just going to make that statement that there was only $125 and they provided us with their money in and money out, and it's every dollar in is a dollar going out, so.
So somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make the motion to accept this request.
I have Paul seconding. Questions, comments, or concerns?
Just to make sure I'm clear, are we paying this, just so for Donna's purposes, are we paying this out of 2021's partnership budget, or are we waiting till 2022's budget?
If we've done this every year, wouldn't it have been in the budget?
Donna's asking.
Donna's got her hand up.
Yeah, so
How can
thank
you
you,
see
council. So we've already given them $125 in 2021.
Okay,
My understanding that they're getting this form in for the November 1st deadline.
This is a 2022 request.
Can we cover it? Make the motion that we defer this until that budget.
Yeah.
Done.
Okay. So I believe I already had a motion on the floor, though, did I not?
I haven't captured one fully yet. So
Okay, it's deferred, it's deferred.
Okay.
I made a motion to defer until budget meeting.
Seconder, please. Paul's still gonna second. All in favor?
I'll just read it back.
Oh, okay, you better read it back after all that.
So the motion on the floor, and just for the clarity of the public, maybe, the motion on the floor is that the council of the township of North Huron hereby defers the request to the 2022 budget deliberations. And so your mover is Councillor Falconer, and your seconder is Councillor Heffer.
All in favor? Carries. Council reports. Ree's report. I believe on the 27th, was it the 27th of this month, we're having an open house from, the 27th of October, between 4 and 7, there's going to be an open house down at the Legion beside the former trailer park, and it's going to be, we're going to have our first look at a 5-story, 73-unit apartment building going up on the lot. We'd like to get this advertised out there because we'd like to see, I'm sure they'd like to see how many people are interested. I am told they already have people coming and asking at this early of a stage. So it'd be great if councilors could be down there or slip over to town and just have a look and a little conversation.
What was that time again, sir?
It is from 4 till 7 on the 27th at the Legion.
Thank you.
Yep. And that's about it for me, I think. Again, a nice quiet couple of weeks, right, Dwayne? I didn't even look at it when I said that. Okay, council member reports, verbal or written updates from members who sit on boards and committees. Go ahead, Rick.
Hey, Reed Bailey, a little CHIP update. Our Constable West Coast, we've gotten a lot of positive feedback. Safe driving for seniors, that's usually our autumn event. As well, Laura's putting in an article in the Here in Perth Boomers magazine on the safe driving. And we're looking at a farm safety program being planned, sharing the road, and particularly left-hand turns versus the traffic. And in the spring of 2022, we're considering, there's this website Parachute, and putting out radio ads to get messages for the road safety. That's about it.
Thank you very kindly. Anyone else have any updates on any committee meetings? Paul, is there anything going on with the forget it, the joke's gone.
I'm not.
I forget it, it's okay. Okay.
Comments?
Comments from members, please.
Reed?
Yes, go ahead, Chris.
This is just a curiosity question. You mentioned a 5-story. We've got to refresh my memory. I thought when they came and made their presentation, was it not a 3-story?
You know what, I think I'll let Dwayne answer that one.
Yeah, and again, I haven't been directly involved in the negotiations, but essentially for the purposes of so my understanding is that it's in terms of actual units, it's a 4-story, but by definition of the zoning bylaw, it's a 5-story, because rather than a 9-meter separation between the floors, they're gonna have an 11-meter separation between the floors. So by definition, it's a 5-story versus a 4-story. But the number of units is 73, I believe.
So you just count 4. Okay.
So
that's
they
a
have,
bit
it's going back to
confusing,
your, through the Reeve in terms of 3-story, yes, they have added another story on top of it. My understanding is from a financial, from a business sort of perspective.
I think that needs to be conveyed, because the public's gonna be, they've already heard it on the radio and what have you, 5-story, like, my wife comes to me and says, Chris, they're gonna build a 5-story, and I'm going, what? That's not what I heard. So, I think I like that they went higher, like taller ceilings. That's good, but it needs to be there needs to be information out that it's only 4 livable stories. Yeah.
And if we go to the to that meeting that night, the architects and all that are there. Everything's going to be lined out for anybody that wants to see it.
Right, and then it's going to come to council for the official plan amendment and the zoning bylaw amendment.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're moving along. I think it's definitely going to be the biggest apartment building in North Huron.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Paul.
Okay, member report. Maybe that's what you're talking about, through your Reeve. Yeah, that, a couple Thursdays ago, I can remember they Cortiva, the Pioneer plant just beside town here, they volunteered 12 people to come and do some planting. The trees were supplied by TD Bank, a deal that they have. And so they planted trees at 3 different spots along the trail, along the river there. And then Burnside came in the afternoon and they planted a small garden down there with, I think, 12 different plants, whatever. They had to clean up some stuff and they put it in, so they're going to have a bed there. They're going to be, I sure hope they're going to be looking after it and whatnot. But planted, they did all the work. Cost us nothing, and there's already been comments about it, so it's a win-win. So it's nice seeing people being involved. That sort of came through tonight from some of the people saying things, so yeah, very good.
Thank you kindly. Anyone else? Not seeing any?
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead,
I just
Trevor.
had one, I guess maybe just one comment as to the discussion about the stuff that was in correspondence. And I'm wondering if that will help this clarity is, if the requests are coming from November 1st for budget purposes, really do they need to be in correspondence requiring action? Because we could just put them all in the budget discussion, that's requiring the action. I mean, arguably the conversation we had here tonight was if we had extra money, could we give it earlier? I guess is the question I had. But I mean, arguably, we're just going to, and the reason I'm saying this is because we're just going to give 120, we were just probably going to give 125 to the Huron County Plowmen's Association with no questions asked, but we'd already given them 125 for the current year. So I mean, if the request is for the budget deliberations, because that's the request that we've asked for the November 1st, couldn't those just requests be included in the budget discussion and not on the correspondence requiring action? I'm just wondering. That would save this. That would solve a lot of the dilemma in having the conversation twice.
And I'm going to be honest with you guys, my council or my staff is not to blame for that, because in correspondence it says beside each one of them, no motion, no motion, no motion. So I will take the blame for the mix-up and confusion, not the staff. But to what Trevor said, I like that idea.
But I guess for some clarity, it depends, I guess, how closely council wants to follow your donation request policy, right? So, for example, your donation request policy says any requests submitted after November 1st will not be considered, right? So, and maybe it's a matter of looking at that policy and updating it, but we as staff kind of provide them when they come in because, for lack of a better way to put it, we have loosely followed the donation request policy in the past, And if you, I mean, certainly if it's followed to a T, there's no problem. They just go on the budget. But we also want to give the opportunity for council to entertain those ones where they might not meet the November 1st deadline. But certainly something that we can consider if we want to look at an update to that policy at some point.
Yeah, we'll have a conversation later about how to handle that. That's good, guys. Appreciate that. Yeah, good points, Trevor. Okay, that's council member comments from members. Notice of motion, we have none. Bylaw number 80, 2021. Repeal bylaw number 60-2015, truck fleet management policy. Do I have a mover? I have Kevin moving. I have Paul seconding. All in favor? Carries. Bylaw number 11.2, because of the changes that took place just before we came here, Dwayne is going to speak to this one.
Thanks, Your Worship. So, couple things. One is in terms of the policy that we have, basically encourages staff to get vaccinated, is designed to educate staff on the benefits of vaccination, and as well in terms of adhering to provincial mandates and regulations. That's the three pillars. I'll refer to it as our vaccination policy. At our last council meeting, there was a suggestion or a recommendation in terms of adding a provision regarding the temporary aspect of the policy. And further to that, there's a provision added that provincial legislation or the provincial mandate would supersede the policy. So those have incorporated into the policy. But just on that note, I got an email from Dave tonight regarding vaccination policy and perhaps some other things to be considered within the policy. So what I'm suggesting is that we defer this bylaw for this evening and we can bring it back to council on Friday for consideration. It seems things keep changing on us.
Motion to divert. I have mover. Do I have a second? Anita's seconding. All in favor? Carries. Okay, thank you very much, Dwayne. 11.3. Agreement with Cliffs Plumbing and Heating. Bylaw number 82-2021. Do I have a mover?
So moved.
Trevor moves. Chris seconds. All in favor? Carries. Announcements. The next regular council meeting will be held on Monday, November 1st, 2021 at 6 p.m. in the North Huron Town Hall Theatre. A special council meeting will be held on Friday, October 22nd, 2021 at 9 a.m. in the North Huron Town Hall Theatre. The next Economic Development and Recovery meeting will be held on Thursday, October 21st, 2021 at 2 p.m. at the Town Hall Theatre here. The next Wingham BIE meeting will be held on Thursday, October 21st, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. in the Hot Stove Lounge in the North Huron Westcast Community Complex. The next Blythe BIE meeting will be held on Thursday, October 28th, 2021 at 8 a.m. at the Blythe District Community Center. Other business, we have none. Closed session, we have none. Confirmation of the bylaw number 83, 2021, confirmation bylaw. Do I have a mover?
Just before we do that,
Yep.
I did want to add one announcement.
Yes.
Is just a repeat of what I had said during the museum communication, is that on November the 10th, we are having a special council meeting to deal with the rec master plan and other service-related discussions, which are all going to probably impact this discussion as well, as relates to the museum request. So, I mean, that November the 10th will be a meeting, I believe it's at 10 o'clock start, just so the people in the public who is either on the video or not, if they weren't here earlier, it is November 10th, that probably a discussion will be had as to service levels and a whole bunch of other things, but that will probably be on that agenda, is my guess.
Okay, thank you. So do I have a mover for bylaw number 83, 2021? I have Rick moving it. Seconder, please. I have Chris seconding. All in favor? Carries. Adjournment. The Council Township of North Huron agrees there being no further business before council. This meeting hereby adjourns at
9:13.
9:13. Do I have a mover? I have Kevin moving. I have Anita seconding. All in favor? Carries. Have a good night. Have a safe night. Have a safe week, everyone.